Good morning, dear participants, those who are here in person and those who are watching us online. So we will start this international conference organized by Insolvency Control Service, and it is devoted to the issues related to digitalization issues. And the official title is Insolvency Goes Digital. For the Insolvency Control Service, we are celebrating the 20th anniversary this year, and a very good reason to celebrate or just to recognize it is with this review, how we are doing with digitalization processes and how our neighboring countries and also the regional countries are doing in this issue. My name is Oskar Sprieda. I will be your moderator today. And those who are thinking from where you are broadcasting, we are in a very beautiful place, 27th floor in the Hotel Radisson, Latvia. We have a view towards Pārdaugava, free view. You understand what I'm meaning. And we have some speakers here in person and also closest fans and also audience behind the blue screens. And very short instructions how to use the platform. I believe this is intuitive and you can see everything, but just in case. So we have three virtual stages, and on the screen you can see it, and original language is the first stage, and also interpretation into Latvian when we'll have English-speaking presenters, and also interpretation into English for all the process in Latvian.
Don't understand the thing I'm saying, you can check the boxes in the upper section of the window. You can see the English translation as a possibility for you to follow the content in English language, especially in the first part of the conference, which will be held in English, in Latvian.
So this is the story and about your involvement. So as an active participant of this event, you also have an opportunity in a written form within the platform to ask questions. So on the right side so somewhere here, there is this window where you can ask a question. So you can tick the box ask via moderator and it will get to me through the filter, but in most case scenario it will get to me. And if there will be opportunity, we'll ask those questions to our presenters. So please use this opportunity. And also next to this window where you can also comment, there is an agenda of all the conference. So you can follow the conference and also to tick the topics and ideas which are the most interesting, and also what you find the most interesting in the presentation. And also about the certificate. So obviously those who attend this conference will receive a certificate, but there is a small nuance. So you have to attend at least a half of the conference to receive this certificate. So 2.5 hours you have to attend. And this is very academic, but I believe that it is worth to spend and to watch all the conference and participate actively. As Insolvency Control Service is in direct supervision of the Minister of Justice, I am very pleased that the Minister is together with us today to congratulate the service in this anniversary and also make an opening speech. So now I give floor to the Minister of Justice, Mr. Jānis Bordāns. Please, the floor is yours. Good day, ladies and gentlemen. Honorable heads of the Insolvency Control Service, employees and guests. Guests who are here participating in person, also remotely. And today, the title of the conference is Insolvency Goes Digital. So it is becoming digital. Everything is becoming digital. And this is a modern trend, because the court administration is becoming digital, courts are becoming digital, and Well, so in Latvia, we these days have a large conference organized by OECD, where the heads of the developed countries get together in Riga, and they also talk about everything becoming digital. But this is not just a modern trend, because the control service of insolvency, together with public and society and community in Latvia, already many years ago made the decision that we are moving towards a modern digital service for citizens provision and to the direction of digitalization. And this world of digital things scares many people because the artificial intelligence will come, robots will come, and they will use people for creating energy and for consumption. But the truth is actually that the future is bright ahead of us, and digital also is something good. We are simplifying processes, and we are able to process a huge amount and large scale of data. And those data we can use not as some are afraid that data about me would be used, but those data are used to make our life more efficient, our economy more efficient, and also our working life more efficient. And so that our mind, our work is not meant for like we did in the old days, that we were reading and doing something with our hands, and also now that we are just writing with hand very simple texts and do some physical things. But actually our mind is meant and intended for much better things, and digitalization makes it possible. Digitalization does the technical things for us, and we can think how to make our work more effective and efficient, and how to make the insolvency processes more effective and efficient. Not easier, but more effective. So we are able to summarize data, and it already happens. So we need to enter data in the correct way and use the system in the correct way. And of course, also we need to have this development of the system. And thanks to the Insolvency Control Service, many years ago, or several years ago before this moment, we started to create electronic system. And it will be modern. It will be the most modern in some time, but we need to invest in it. And I believe that everybody understands in the government and also in the ministry that we need to invest in in labor force, in humans, and also in modern digital devices, so that we don't use computers in a very old school, ineffective way. And today, I'm also very proud that Insolvency Control Service and court administration did their job. Maybe not with the easiest ways. It's not so easy. I know how you point out to your needs to improve electronic data processing system, to the fact that the users of the system very often, they are very advanced, and we are proud of it. They know what are effective and modern systems, and they want something better, even better. And this is our driving force, and it makes us to compete mutually and make each other to develop and get the best result. And today we have an anniversary for the Insolvency Control Service, and this celebration was organized or provided and given to us by your employees and the heads of this service. And so in the end, I would like to say that we'll continue working together, both the ministry and also the service and also the court administration. because all of us, we are patriots about our work. And I know that employees of the Insolvency Control Service, they, in a great extent, do their work not based on their salaries, but based on their enthusiasm and their awareness that they like this job and that they really want be proud about results of their work, and so that all Latvia can be proud of the results, and also the Ministry of Justice can be proud. And I hope this day of celebration is a very good initial point for next 20 or more years, when we will not only be proud of our work, but also will be satisfied with our stability, satisfied with our working conditions, and also our partners and clients will be happy and satisfied and would say, yes, it was complicated, there was a lot of job needed, but all of these things and we heard before about insolvency systems and services and events. All these difficulties and challenges are behind us, and we are looking safely and courageously into the future. And in the end of my speech, I would like to give thanks and express my gratitude to the head of the insolvency service. So thank you for all that you have done, and thank you to what you have done. And I would like to give this bouquet to Mrs. Sala. So while your service was on vacation, all the team was working under your supervision. So thank you to all the team. Thank you very much to the minister. So not only a speech, but also some tangible, something we received. So thank you very much. And before we start the content of the conference, we have one more welcoming speech. And you can guess that the head of the Insolvency Control Service, Mrs. Ines Stein, has also prepared a speech for us. Good day, ladies and gentlemen, listeners here in person and also remotely, our colleagues, experts of this sector in Latvia and also from abroad. Thank you very much, Mr. Minister, for all these congratulations and also nice words you said about. And I'm very, very satisfied and happy about our cooperation with the Ministry of Justice and with its team, because only with this mutual support we were able to start the process of digitalization some years ago. And today we assess and we can see the benefits of this digitalization of the process. And I would like to express gratitude to all of you in this conference, Insolvency Goes Digital. And with this conference, we are also celebrating the 20th anniversary of the Insolvency Control Service. I highly appreciate the great interest which was caused by our conference, and also your interest into this event also proves that this topic is very important. The conference will be organized in two parts. The first part we devoted to the story, how in Latvia insolvency became digital. The Insolvency Control Service started the digitalization in 2017, when we started the foundations of the system EMUS. And today, I can be proud and say that EMUS has become a very needed and very often used tool for the control service and also for administrators. And as the minister said, creation of digital tools requires intellectual and also human resources investment. And therefore, I would like to use this opportunity to express gratitude and give thanks to those people from the service and also from the court administration, without whom we wouldn't have EMUS system and who are still working continuously to develop this system. And today, together, we will appreciate and also get inspiration for the development in the future. In the second part, we will look outside of Latvia and we will hear experience from Lithuania, Poland, and Czech Republic. I am especially happy that we are having the European Reconstruction and Development Bank representative Catherine Bridge-Zoller participating remotely in this conference, and she will also provide us with a presentation about European tendencies in the digital insolvency. So I wish to all of you a really interesting, exciting, and useful day. So be active and also please participate in discussions. And I am sure that the experience stories we will hear will inspire us for the development into the future, into the area of digitalization. So with this, I proclaim the conference Insolvency Goes Digital as open, and we start this conference at this moment. Thank you very much to Mrs. Stein. We have such a good cooperation. I was intended, I had to speak about the agenda this conference, but it's already done. But we will have a very good content. So first part will be more about Latvia's experience, and second part we will look at other countries and how they are doing. So let us start without delays. The first speaker will be from the side of organizers from the Insolvency Control Service, and she is representing a very interesting department, the first supervision department. So that makes me to question, how many departments are there? So Agnes Bayer, who is representative of the Insolvency Control Service, and she will speak about the insolvency registration system, implementation of this system, and what's the state today. So where are we? So do you use this EMUS as abbreviation? What's the name? EMUS? Do you say EMUS? Yes, we say EMUS. Thank you.
Hello, colleagues. Also, those watching us remotely, we have two supervisory departments answering to the moderator's question. I have to say that Latvia in digitalization of insolvency processes started in 2008 with the implementation of a register of insolvency, but a significant jump was implemented in 2019 with implementation of electronic recording system for insolvency, and this is the first time that we will speak about in detail about the system. I will tell about the history, the functions, also benefits and development trends for the system. Historically, the system had been created as a recording system for administrative overlooking. Until 2016, administrators submitted their reviews in Excel form and send it to us, to the control service, by email. And there were two problems connected with that. First of all, with those Excel sheets, it was quite difficult to trace and supervise all the administrators, although the form was provided for by the cabinet regulation, but each administrator tailored the Excel sheets as they wanted. Thus, it was rather difficult. And the data that these sheets contained could not be gathered in a quantitative way, so we couldn't gather any statistics. And State Control in their report in 2015 pointed that out, as well as Foreign Investors Council also pointed that out, saying that we need the data for supervising these processes, as well as for collecting data. So that's why in April the 1st, in 2019, the system was launched. The system was rather simple. Administrators provided information once in 3 months, and sent this information to all the involved parties. But we, the control service, accessed this information through the system. This was kind of simplified procedure, but historically, there were basic reports embedded into those reports. So we could get the information about the indicators of recovery, as well as length of recovery process, and all the expenses. But later we understood that this information is not enough, and we need more information, wider information, and we have to promote also supervision. That's why on the 1st of January 2019, EMU system, or electronic recording system for insolvency. I will use the abbreviation EMU further on. And we understood also that those data should be available to wider public. And that's why we were asked to make the system that would that could be published on the website of the Insolvency Control System. So the old EMUS could not provide this functionality. That's why we came up with the revised or better version of the system. What is EMUS? First of all, this is public. It has a status of state importance. The court administration is the holder of the system. We are the managers. The system is, first of all, subject to state information system law, as well as insolvency law, which defines the aims of the system, as well as additional cabinet regulation that prescribes how this system should work. Aims, 3 aims: to promote insolvency control services work; second, to foster the work of administrators and supervisory bodies, as well as to promote exchange of information between parties. Accordingly, the users of this program, those are our employees, administrators, as well as supervisors of insolvency, and the public, as well as other parties involved, creditors and courts. Speaking about EMUS functionalities, I have to say that the first function is that this is the working environment for the administrators, meaning that administrators are registering all the incoming and outgoing documents in the system, namely full documentation of any insolvency processes can be obtained from EMU. Starting from 2021, we have also e-address functionality. Thus, administrators through this e-address can send and receive documents through the system. And third functionality, administrators come up with a detailed accounting on the ongoing insolvency processes, namely costs, assets, participants, recovered assets, namely everything that the administrator does is entered into the system. This system is also a system for law enforcement agencies. Here I have to say that supervisory supervisors has less opportunity to enter data than the administrators, but they also can send and receive documents. And mainly that's what the supervisors do. List of administrators. Insolvency Control Service is the institution who appoints administrators. Thus, it is natural that we are keeping up and updating the information about administrators, about the processes each and every administrator administrates, as well as about civil liability of any given administrator. Why this list is so important? Because EMUS gives this information to court informative system, where later on there are administrators chosen, but Karina is going to talk about that. And EMUS is also the system where all the information about administrators is accessible, and accessible also to public. And another question. This system is a key to a successful insolvency processes. First, our control system is risk-based, and in order to do this risk-based control, we need information, enough information, and we have to process it in a quantitative manner. And the second, what we do, everything, supervision of administrators, supervision of the information provided by the administrators. Thus, we, the control service, access this information through the system. So we can do this supervision remotely. Namely, we have to address administrators only on some occasions. All the other information can be obtained, and that allows us to do it remotely, as I said. Published information. I already mentioned that according to our basic documents, we decided to publicize certain information. Thus, on our website, the society can see overarching information about the resultative indicators of administrators, namely the breaches, as well as result-driven indicators of the processes, as well as the number of those processes. If the society is interested, this information is publicly available. Requests from the employees. We are also the ones who are administrating the guarantee fund of those requests, and this process is very time-consuming and rather peculiar and difficult. Underneath, there are big calculations and a lot of administrative activities required. And one of the aims by implementing EMUS, we wanted also to save some resources, and now the calculations of the requests of employees also happen in EMUS. E-service. Speaking about digitalization, digital environment is accessible to wider society and many more people. That's why we have created also an e-service in this system. E-service means that any creditor can submit its request to the administrator through the system. With secure tools, by logging in, submitting the request, and an administrator is then seeing it. In addition, any creditor has access to wider information about the processes in reviews of administrators. Also, this information is regularly updated. If the administrator enters one document today, then I, as for example, the submitter of the request, as a creditor, can see that document already today. And the last and mostly the most significant thing that we can get from EMUS are data. And I wanted to talk about data a lot more because the minister already touched upon the topic of statistics and data, and it is very important. State control, as well as international Monetary Fund also pointed out how important is the quality of data and the sufficient amount of data in any given sector. Because without data, you cannot come up with decisions in legislation, nor come up with conclusions about the work of any given sector. That's why EMUS is a unique info system, because in our country, insolvency process is shared by several institutions, and every one of them has some information about the process. The process starts in court. That's why the initial information is in court information system about the initiation of a court. Then the data is entered by the administrator. The creditor's requests, as well as costs of the process, as well as assets recovered, are entered into the system, and the data about the supervision results of the administrators are with the Insolvency Control Service. And EMUS is the platform where all those data sources come together, creating a unique case on the ongoing insolvency processes. We do have other systems, for example, other databases interconnected with this register that are compatible, so we can access with few clicks a lot of information. That's why we can do the risk-based supervision. In order to do that, we have to talk about big data that has to be supervised, and by that we can see and filter the data, and we can find and tackle the risks quickly and base our supervision on those risks. Also, objective evaluation of the sector. We can see all data in a dynamic way, how insolvency sector is doing and where it moves to. At the moment, it is not too topical, but the amount of insolvency cases during COVID times were very rapid. I hope that this dynamic will not repeat, but during that time, this EMU was very, very good and sufficient. If such a case arises, we can come up with some measures. Information analysis and risk-based supervision. Those are the gains that until implementation of system we didn't have. I am looking at the time allocated to me, but I would like to briefly inform you about the changes of EMUS. With the creditor requests, we have e-service. Until then, the requests had to be submitted by email or face-to-face. Then administrator dealt with it and entered into the register manually. This order is still the same, but creditor's request can be submitted in addition through e-service, and administrator by clicking it in the system is entering it into the register. It doesn't have to be manual. A request for employees, administrative process that was rather burdensome until then. We had those processes manually. Now all the calculations are automatic, as well as replies are generated automatically. Also, administration before the system, every administrator had their own system, as I mentioned, an Excel sheet form where all the incoming, outgoing documents were registered. Now it is the system of state importance where everything is being registered. In addition, there is an A address where administrator can send and receive documents. Also, reports and spreadsheets where administrator himself entered all the sums and later generated reviews and sent those out to all the involved persons. Now these reports are generated once a month, not once in 3 months, much more often. An administrator with his active activities is not influencing anything, but he or she regularly enters all the information in EMUS system, and system itself generates the report and sends out to all the involved persons, and automatically this document is also registered in the case files of the administrator. Gains. For administrators, it's an address and easier passing of documents. Why I am mentioning address? If it were not implemented in the system for sending emails, administrators should look for other possibilities. But now it's not the case. Compatibility with other systems, namely CSDD, information on vehicles of debtors as well as account register, where all the information can be found about the accounts of the debtors, and through this compatible connection of registers, administrator can access all that information, generation of documents as well as requests of employees. All of that is a benefit. For us, the supervision is the main gain, accessibility to data, and for the public, it is the greater transparency of all insolvency processes. If speaking about creditors, they have wider information and they can submit their requests online. About EMUS activities, we have registered 1.5 million of documents since the 1st of January 2021. Also 32 insolvency processes have been registered, but we don't have historic data entered there. EMUS users, I'm talking about supervisory bodies, administrators, and us is 247, and the creditors entries are 3,058. Although the system has to be adapted regularly, we have thought about future development of the system because it has a great potential. And those are 3 ways or branches for development that we have planned for and that we have involved in our development documents are data amount and quality, automated supervision tools, and user-friendly system and digital solutions. Speaking about data amount and quality, I already mentioned how much this accessibility is important, but it is even more important for those data to be precise and correct, and that we can ensure from compatibility with other systems, namely acquiring information from the first source. For example, if the debtor has property that has been registered in the land register, we can obtain that information from the land register directly. That's why data quality is the fact why we dream about additional compatibility with other registers. Namely, here I speak about state revenue service information, having data about commercial activities of debtors until insolvency process was initiated, commercial activities, turnover, etc. Why it is so important? Because now looking at insolvency data, we kind of look at it remotely from the previous activities of a commercial company in order to find out where, in which areas our debtors have worked before, in which sectors we have to do the manual work until now. But what the access to state revenue service system would allow us to do is to see the insolvency sector together with information about companies, about business activities, and that is very important, especially when we talk about risk-based system development, data quality, and bonuses of using those data is what we think and should think about the future. Automated tools, what Mr. Minister already said, people has to do things where intellectual involvement is required. Thinking about that, we would like to develop automated control tools that would allow the system itself to find data anomalies and discrepancies, and we could use our own resources for and with cases that have been tackled already by the system, and people could analyze the existing problematic cases, as well as user-friendly system and digital solutions. We understand that the system should be user-friendly with some bonuses, convenient to use. Otherwise, it is just a battle that we will lose for system to be used by others. That's why we have planned for many interesting additions or features. We have planned to release the data for even wider society, accessible to wider society. This is the first time when we present this system for wider audience. I believe I have a minute, and I would like to say thank you to the colleagues of Insolvency Control Service for their involvement into maintaining and creation of this system. It is a very big job. Also, I want to say thank you to all the insolvency administrators who use the system regularly, and they come up with their suggestions. Also, thank you to the colleagues from the Ministry of Justice for maintaining the system. And I also have to say thank you to court administration colleagues that have been together with us from the first day of implementation of the system, and they are still helping us to maintain the system on a daily basis. Thank you very much for your attention. If you have any questions, as I will be glad to answer to them.
Dalīsim to skatuvi, ne? Tā, bet tālu neiet, lai tie mikrofoni noķer.
Okay, thank you very much to those who are sending questions. So a very general question. So how was it to build the system? It's not an easy task, right? Yes, this task wasn't an easy one, especially considering that this institution didn't have experience how to build those such systems. And the task wasn't easy, and we have learned a lot today, and we also know what we would do differently if we were given this chance in a different way, a better way. Yes, in those systems, it is very important to create this specification to be able to develop and program everything. Yes, this is an art, and this is a question and issue how we are developing still. But yes, that's right. In our institution, we are people with legal education, and to speak with IT people in one language, it's very difficult. Yes, you sometimes need an interpreter, right? So what would you do differently with today's eyes if you look back at this process? With today's eyes, if we look at this process, then we wouldn't take such a large bite straight away. We would divide it into smaller bits. because this area and this field of work which we needed to cover was huge. But of course, we are very happy and satisfied what we have done, and the system will never be ready, the same as Riga will never be ready and never be built. But very practical things. We wouldn't think that we need everything with automated processes, because insolvency process is so rather complicated with so many nuances that this automatization for the system actually stops us and hinders us to understand the truth. Yes, this is the same as modern cars. So you liquidate this button and you have a display, and you need more time to regulate something. With this button, it was easier. Yeah, this is the same. We also have a question from the audience. Thank you for sending, and I encourage you to continue doing this. A very specific. Maybe this is more to developers about coding. So was it code intensive or low code or no code approach, or you don't know about it? I'm not competent to answer this type of question. Yeah, but then we have another question. Is EMUS standing behind what we see publicly, the register of insolvency? Are they linked together? Yes, they are linked together. The insolvency, whether insolvency register is kind of standing in front or EMUS, it's relative, because in EMUS there are all data which are in insolvency register, and in insolvency register part of data gets from EMUS. So those systems are closely linked. Another question, or maybe recommendation for other organizations, what they, if they are considering something, building something digital, to do or not to do it, because we are very proud of system, and this is a great benefit. Thank you to Agnes. So we could applaud now. Not many of us are here in person, but still. So thank you very much. I am reading about the next presentation. I'm thinking about insolvency process as a non-professional, how these administrators are appointed. So here we have interesting terminology that they are referred and recommended and also appointed. So about this we will speak in the next presentation, where we can see how two important systems are linked and cooperate together. So one system is EMUS, Electronic Insolvency Registration System, and Court Administration Information System. And here I would like to draw your attention that this appointment of administrators is done automatically, but it will be told by Karina Paturska, who is the head of the legal department of the Insolvency Control Service. I can see she has a yellow folder. Maybe this is a list of administrators. Let us see what's that is. Good day, listeners here in person and also those remotely. And Oskars, no, this is not a list of administrators, because this is also digital for us. I will not try to hide from you that the moment how this administrator is directed to the process is a very sensitive moment, and therefore there was always a lot of attention drawn to this, checking whether everything is done in the correct way, and there is no doubt why this specific administrator received this process, and why we took out this short and small part of EMUS for today's presentation to tell you about, is that it excellently show us how digital tools can help to make the process more transparent, more efficient, and also neutral. And we will return back to those terms during my presentation. But right now, I would like to draw your attention into the past. So how it developed so that we are able to assess and appreciate how it looks today. So the first part in the procedure was created already in 2008. And the list of administrators was kept in the web page of Insolvency Administration Service. So using technical resources available at that time. Initially, we had 5 lists of administrators and they were linked to the territory of regional court. And so on each working day, these lists of administrators were linked together with this insolvency subjects of insolvency, which were listed in alphabetical order. And all this process was publicly available, and you were able to see it in our webpage, our homepage. Later, we devoted a lot of resources to strengthen this principle of randomness, how this queue is organized. So in 2013, all the administrators were listed together in one list in a random order, and also the subjects were listed in the random order. And the list of administrators was mixed together once a year. In 2017, we made one step forward, and this list of administrators was mixed once per quarter, and also the vacant subjects were ordered in the alphabetical order, so to all provide more traceability how this queue is moving forward. So you can see that already in 2008, we started the automatization of this process. And always in this process, there were 2 players present, and also we as a holders of the list of administrators, and then there was also a court providing information about vacant subjects to us. In 2019, this process experienced the largest changes when the electronic system came on stage, which was described by Agnes so widely. So EMUS was already created. So further, this process, how administrators are appointed to each case, were used using EMUS and the system of court administration, TIS, and automatic linkage of both systems. So the court administration as the person holding the information from courts, and also our service holding the list of administrators were linked together. And now I'll tell more in detail how it happens. So visually you can see this process. So in very simple way. So on the side of EMUS, we have a list of applicants, of the administrators, and the selection when a specific administrator is linked with a specific process. This is ensured by the court system. And the list of applicants or possible candidates for insolvency administrators is made by a specific wish of these administrators. So they express a wish that they want to be included in the list, and they have no limitations to their performance of their duties. So they their activities are not stopped. They can work. And how it happens, how they are included in the list, they write an application, they turn to our service, and the person who is responsible in the next working day place them in EMUS system in the list of administrators. And the list of candidates is not published, but at the same time, the administrator can get into the electronic system and they can see whether they are included in this queue or not. And so they can test whether the service, our service, has performed the duty and have placed them in this queue. The next step is that we move to the side of the court system, and there are 2 flows in their side. So the flow of natural persons and the flow of legal persons. And when the administrator is included in the list, they automatically go to both flows. So they cannot make a choice that they want to administer only natural person's insolvency process or insolvency process of the legal person. They are both either in both lists or in none of the lists. And when the administrator is excluded from the list, they are excluded from both flows. Right now, in the selection of administrators, there is no gradation, looking at their professional experience, for example, or so on, because we presume that at the moment when administrator is appointed for his duties, they have enough competency to direct the process of insolvency for natural or legal persons. And the court, the judge, approves the candidate, specific candidate, which were linked to this case in the court. And so now, some very important things about this automatic selection, which is the most important part of all this process. So we like to compare this with baskets, and therefore I will use this analogy talking about this queue. So the principle is as follows. The administrator, which is in the list of candidates, and they are active after all the previous candidates are already selected for a specific process. So let us imagine we have a basket where there are administrators from the list of candidates. And they go out of this basket. They are recommended or linked to a specific process. And the new administrators fall in this basket only when the last administrators from this previous batch of apples were chosen for the process. So practically it means if you enter the queue today as an administrator, it doesn't mean that tomorrow you will already participate in this automatic selection process. It can be or not, because you need to wait until this basket is empty from the previous administrators. And when we get deeper in this basket, as soon as administrator is appointed to a specific process, they go out of this basket in a specific flow, and they are in this kind of waiting regime, and they will get back to the basket again when the basket is empty. And I would like to remind that if an administrator is excluded from this queue, for example, they wanted it or there are some limitations for them regarding their duties and post, then they immediately are taken out of these baskets. So there is no delay in this process. And next, to speak about this process in a general way, I have defined 4 basic principles which are foundation of all this procedure. So we base all this on this principle. So first principle is the principle of randomness. So this is a absolutely random selection, and this selection is ensured by court administration systems algorithms. The next principle is proportionality, and this is ensured by the fact that the administrator is included in both flows, both for natural persons and also legal persons. And so in this way, we ensure that administrators have this balanced number of the proceedings, ensuring that they have this balanced and general professional experience. Then also we have the transparency principle, which is very essential. And this is ensured in several ways. The simplest way is as this process is organized in the systems, the state systems, and about each activity there is auditing records. So we can see who what did and what has been done. and whether this is according to the regulation. Then also we perform independent audits where independent auditors are assessing and evaluating these auditing records and checking whether everything happened like it had to happen and that there hasn't been any unlawful intervention. Then also the insolvency service post factum, when this basket has emptied, basket of administrators, then we publish the list of the queue which has ended, so that all the administrators see that all the regulations were done and that this queue, this line worked as it should have worked. And the fourth principle is neutrality. So this automated linking ensures it. And this is one of the largest differences from the previous system. Nobody was able to see at the online regime, to see what was happening, to see what is happening with this queue. So we also have this transparency that with audits, we reduce the risk that this queue is not visible, because we really check whether everything happened in the correct way. Also, neutrality is expressed through automatization. So we also avoid creation or happening of some human mistakes, or also some interests from the involved employees. So in general, I believe that we managed to create a system thanks to cooperation between those two systems, court system and our system, and it really ensures that this appointment of insolvency administrators is done in the effective, neutral, and transparent way. And I can really say that during recent years, we haven't had in the public space some questions raised or doubts about correctness of this queue. So I can say that we have achieved our goal with this queue very well. Thank you very much. After the presentation, of course, the feeling is better. Yeah, a lot better. That's interesting. Do you have? Are you satisfied? Did you manage as you wished? Almost. Dale Carnegie, who is in the previous century, the lecturer, very famous lecturer in the previous century, he said there are always three speeches: one you were planning, one you did, and one you wanted to make. And they are different between themselves. And he was also training Warren Buffett in the public speech, so he was like that. Okay, let's see what we can talk about the future. I saw this graph, how it developed, and also this basket, very, very nice illustration. But what about the future? What are the possibilities to develop in the future? Something doesn't work and we need to improve. Yes, of course, we see these opportunities for development. In my presentation, I said that we don't have this grading of administrators. And for the future, we see that probably we need this leveling of administrators, because we have separate processes for credit institutions, and administrators have totally different requirements, higher requirements. So if we included this process also in this automated queue, then there would be needed and specific requirements about specific experience and competencies and so on. So these criteria for different levels could be like specific niches for administrators. For example, for credit institutions. Yeah, if we speak about banks, there are also, they would need the AML certificates, and also the Ministry of Finance have accepted that this is also another requirement for those administrators working with these insolvency bank processes. And most questions come into English, so foreigners are more active. Somehow Latvians are not asking questions. So and I have already 3-4 questions into English, and I need to translate, and it's not so easy for me. Okay, the question is about the same. same. So those competencies and experience of administrators are different. So all the administrators kind of are professionals, but different skills. So what about this automatic appointment? Can we automatically do that? This case is appointed are according to the competencies of a specific person. We were in backstage also talking about this, how it is. Yes, of course, there are two sides. So when these administrators enter the job market, of course, they are professional, they should have skills. But at the same time, we understand when these administrators enter the labor market and they are first job they are appointed is some company with 1,000 employees. This is a big challenge, of course. And then there is this kind of this is a political decision, actually. How do we do it? Do we put those levels and we grade them, or do we give an equal opportunity to everyone? Because there is a difference between somebody who just enters the job or the one who has already some experience. And yeah, we were saying that there are people also who pass the driving license test and they can drive, but we would like them to have some more practice. But then there are also people who already had some experience in driving in some rural areas, and they are much better than the ones who haven't had enough experience. But it's very hard to set some criteria that you are, for example, too new to an experience. Yes, so I wish you good success, and thank you for your presentation. Thank you very much to Karina. Okay, you can ask questions on the right side on the screen. So there is a window possibility to ask questions. Also, you can make comments. I also received one compliment, so that was very pleasant for me. Okay, so the insolvency process, if we think about it, then of course, at a certain moment, there is disposing of this property, if there is such, and then we have digital tools, and especially this system of e-auctions. And talking about auctions, I remember one story is about Latvian state forests, and they have a lot of timber, and there are a lot of people that want it. So demand is 2 times higher than supply. And how to do it honestly? They also have e-auctions, and this is a good way because entrepreneurs, competitors come and agree something or to do something. But since Latvian State Forestry had these e-auctions, they were able to increase the price because it worked better. I don't know whether Ivars, our next speaker, would touch upon those aspects. Ivars, who come from the court administration, who is the deputy head of the innovations department. It's very hard to say his job title, but Ivars Schwabe will be the next one who will speak about these e-auctions. Yes, of course, you can applaud also those who are watching online.
Tā, labdien visiem!
So hello everyone. My name is Ivars Schwabe, and I will tell you about e-auctions and the place of e-auctions, why we created this site, and a bit about statistics. What are the gains from this e-auction site? I have placed here a slide on how this site looks like. This is the list that we can see from the site, as well as the address of the e-auction site. So now let's tackle the essence. Why this site is so important, what is its goals and tasks. The first, as Oskars already mentioned, is to decrease unlawful or dishonest activities, because as already mentioned, there have been cases when people just agree upon, for example, sales of a property. Now, this e-auction eliminates such possibility. Also, to make it more convenient and more economic, meaning that this site or this platform ensures that not every organizer of auctions have to create their own site. There is a unified site. First of all, that's better understanding as well as economy of resources by creation of such a system. Now this is a unified solution understood by everyone, and everyone who needs it can use it. And the second issue is, as those auctions are held electronically, auctions can be accessible from anywhere in the world. The only thing you need is a computer and an internet connection. So that's why the biggest gains and tasks are inevitable. Now I'm going to tell you about the types or ways offered by e-auctions. 3 types of auctions. First of all, immovable property auctions. Those are the basic or main amount of auctions. Those are offered together in interconnectivity with the land register. Means that we can switch to land register's site and see information about that immovable property. Also, more auctions of movable property. Those are separated in bodily or imbodily. Bodily is, for example, a mean of transportation, a vehicle, or auctions of bonds or shares. Also, rights of lease can be auctioned, but until now there is no regulation allowing that. But there will be a third type for movable property. Speaking about safety, it happens on internet. It takes place on internet. That's why safety is the most important thing. Unique identifier. What does it mean? That during an auction, when coming up with a bid, no one, everything is anonymous, because everyone is signed by a unique identifier, and only at the end of the auction, the names and last names appear, who has made bids and who has won any certain auction. And the second aspect is the safety check or security check, meaning that we have a supervisor who supervises 24 hours this process, checking whether there have not been any illegal activities or any abruptions or breaks during the time of auction. If such things have happened, organizers of the auction are informed, and they can decide whether to make the results void or to continue. What are the organizers participating on this site? I have not mentioned before, but this system was created for sworn bailiffs. And now the scope of users have been expanded, namely insolvency administrators, as well as legal bodies, legal persons, and municipality bodies can organize auctions. Now about statistics, about the gains that you will see by figures, what this site provides. for the organizers. At the moment, in total, there have been more than 25,000 auctions published, which for Latvia, I believe, is a good number. The next figure is visits, 800,000, which means that your property can be sold for higher price, because an average amount of visitors per month is this 800,000 per month. Then some interesting statistics. The highest price bidded 18 million for removable property 5 years ago. But of course, there are other very, very costly, very expensive objects. And this is the figure 28%, signifying that it shows the increase from the basic price, from the initial price. So we know that the initial price is usually lower, and then the increase is by 28%. That's the average, which I think is a very good indicator, and also ensures a higher price for the seller, which would not be true if there were no e-auction. Auctions that are successful, because we know that there are objects or properties that are not so attractive, and buyers are not interested in bidding. So meaning that about 70% of all the auctions, property or something is being sold. So the auction ends successfully, which is also a good number, taking into account all the things that are auctioned. And finally, who are the bidders? The majority, according to statistics, 75%, natural persons are the bidders, and also the final buyers. Non-residents, also some legal persons. Speaking about non-residents, we look at on the international level what we offer and a vision for the future. There is a project in EU named Leila, meaning that it would be possible to find on Leila portal auctions throughout Europe. At the moment, this project is in the process of elaboration, but we are one of the partner countries. So also our auctions will be accessible to EU citizens, and things that will be auctioned will find the owners outside of Latvia. Authorization, how non-residents can authorize and access the site in two ways: through EIDAS, meaning international e-signature access place. There are certain member states participating in EIDAS, but thus you can access the site directly, or you can go to any bailiff or any insolvency administrator, and then this person will acquire his or her password and username, and will be able to access an e-auction. But this should happen face-to-face, or there has to be a submission submitted with an electronic signature. Also, for some years, we offer this site in two languages, in English and in Latvian, meaning that we have automated translation device, translating all the published issues, as well as we have already translated standard fields that have to be filled in. So thank you very much for your attention. Are there any questions? Thank you, Ivars. So at the moment, there are no questions from the platform, but I do have some questions. For how long this system is valid? Since 2015, already set for 7 years. Initially, that was meant for immovable property, but later on it expanded. And now you're saying 25,000 auctions, about 4,000 per year. How to get acquainted, how to understand it. I, as a user, maybe can click and get information only about the things that I am interested in. Yes, indeed. You can subscribe whatever you are interested in. For example, if you are interested in vehicles, you can just tick the box and I will get a notification as soon as someone will sell a car. If I look for an apartment in Sarkandaugava, then I will be notified. Yes, you can go in greater detail, but those auctions are very individual and individualized. So every organizer of auctions can actually tailor make their auctions. So if you go into too much detail, you might not be notified. And 2/3 are successful, you're saying. And what happens with that 1/3 where the process was not successful? Are they undergo repeatedly? Or how does it work? We have normative regulation, cabinet regulation. Yeah, we can organize repeated auction, but if we speak about insolvency administrators, there is a second stage or second auction, and it's interesting that they are the only ones who can offer or downgrade the object. If in the first time no one buys the object, the price can be diminished by insolvency administrators. So it might be that you even can buy for a better price. So there is a second auction and there is a price. And I am saying I want, is the price dropping at that moment? It is dropping all the time until you come up with a bid. And from the moment you are saying, expressing your bid, at that moment it increases. So we can come to terms that we should not announce our big bids and the price will continue dropping. No, it is not possible because users are anonymous. Can a natural person come up with an offer for e-auction? No, they cannot do that as natural persons, but in public auctions that can be organized by sworn bailiffs, they can, meaning that sworn bailiff will manage this auction from the very beginning to the end and then pass the result over to the seller. He will introduce the buyer to the seller. Is it only for the cases when people are going bankrupt, or even if I want to sell my apartment in Sarkandaugava, I should contact a sworn bailiff? Yes, you can do that even if you are not bankrupt. For example, my friend, he wanted to buy an apartment and he agreed with the seller verbally through a public announcement. But at the moment when my friend did go already to do the paperwork, the seller went out of this deal saying that someone else offered a higher price. And my friend was very, very sad, saying that I didn't know that this is an auction. So the person should have gone to a bailiff and should go to an auction. Yes, indeed. This is the case. Any questions? You are all experts. You might not have any questions. And you don't want to ask tricky questions to Ivars because you're all colleagues. Thank you very much. And I have a lot of information, a lot of new information. Maybe those who work in this sector do not have that much new information, but I have. So we have concluded the first part of the conference. We will have a longer break, but please be back at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. In the first part, we looked at the digitalization processes for insolvency in Latvia, but after the break at 1 o'clock, we will listen to and learn about insolvency processes of other countries. And that might be very inspirational and very useful to all of you. Thank you. Let us resume at 1 o'clock.
So welcome back to the Jubilee Conference, organized by the Insolvency Control Service. So it's already 20 years we've been having this service, and this part of the conference is going to be in English. We will listen to experience stories from several countries. So if it's best for you to listen with Latvian translation, you can find 3 buttons at the online screen where you're watching this online conference.
So I'm switching to English
you
now,
will
as
have
we have a
Latvian
program
translation.
with foreign guests, foreign speakers in our agenda. So in this part of the conference, obviously we will focus on the international experience, and we will have several speakers sharing their successful and not so successful experience regarding the insolvency process and its digitalization. We will also hear from a representative of European Bank for Reconstruction and Development about more general tendencies of digitalization in Europe. So I'm very glad to introduce our first speaker, who is ready to talk about not so successful experience. That is actually quite a rare case. Usually people are quite good at showing off and talking about their successes, but not so keen about lessons learned and probably less successful experiences. The presenter comes from Poland. He is the Deputy Director of the Economic Law Department of the Polish Ministry of Justice. Emil Szczepanik, I'm guessing. Is that was okay? He's nodding, so it's good. Hello.
Hello. Good afternoon to everyone. Thank you very much for the invitation from Latvian Insolvency Control Service. I have to admit that we were influenced by your legislation on insolvency of consumers, and so it's very good that I can also provide you with some information about the way we try to digitalize our proceedings. I'm also really interested in the information that we're given today by your experts, and especially the way you regulated the nomination of insolvency practitioners. That is done automatically, so it's really interesting, and probably we'll try maybe to apply some solution that you have in your country, at least for consumer bankruptcies. As for our process of digitalization, it's as you said, probably everyone agrees that it should be a success story, and generally I must say that that we also follow this path, that we also think, and probably there are plenty of interested parties in Poland who think that our digitalization process is going in the right direction. But still, there are plenty of obstacles during during that time of introducing the system to this digitalization into our proceedings. Next slide, please. About history, we just plan to digitalize our insolvency proceedings, in fact, by introducing a restructuring law. The law was introduced in May 2015, enforcing the 1st of January 2016. There was in that law also mentioned, in fact, it was inscribed in the law that these proceedings should be digitalized, but entering of force of that article was moved up to the 1st February 2018. At the end of the legislative process, it was clear that we won't be able to apply the software, the system into our system. So the law was introduced without this component, this very important component, and the whole proceedings were running still on paper. And in fact, that was also one of the reasons these new solutions that were introduced were not so welcomed, because in fact they were created as being part of a digitalized system where the information is moving quickly. So the work went on and on creating the system, and the decision was made to make it more ambitious way. So we decided to not only to digitalize the insolvency proceedings, but also to create a separate national register of indebted entities. So not to cover only the court proceedings, but also to create one place in our system where participants on the market could verify whether any entity or a natural person or a legal person is having any troubles with indebtedness, whether it will be by being in an insolvency proceeding or restructuring proceeding, or some types of individual enforcement actions. So the new law was enacted in 2018. As you see, still we hadn't the digitalized restructuring law, as it was planned to have it on 1st February 2019, and it was moved up to the 2020. Then we had some new ideas about the reforms within the insolvency law, especially the consumer insolvency law. Some elements of these reform were copied from your system. Then there was COVID, and the simplified restructuring proceeding was created. So there were changes into our law. So the system, as the developer who was chosen in a tender proceeding, was signaling that they have to adapt the system to also constant changes into our material law on insolvency and restructuring law. At last, the system was introduced in 1st of December 2021. Next slide, please. So the main, there are two elements in our system. The first one is this register, the separate register for company register, and the register for natural persons. So as I said, it deals with indebtedness. Mainly, it gives information about insolvency restructuring proceedings, starting of the proceeding, and important parts of that, enacting finishing or adopting the list of claims, or the decision about the distribution plans, the end of the proceeding, also about the voting on restructuring plan in case of the repayment plans for natural persons, so that it covers both natural and legal persons. There are also information about disqualification under insolvency law, but it doesn't cover the disqualification on penalty law. That may also occur, but there's a separate register for it into our system. Then we also provide information about recognition of insolvency proceedings, not only those covered by EU regulation on insolvency, but also as we have the model law on cross-border insolvencies adopted, so also recognition of foreign proceedings outside EU are also made public in this register. But it, as I said before, it also covers individual enforcement actions of bailiffs, social security, or tax authorities if they are unsuccessful. So this information is given also in that system, and ongoing enforcement actions in case of enforcement of alimonies. The next slide, please. I think that might be interesting for you for how much time we give this information. So generally the data is permanently in the system, but this data is available for public generally for 10 years, for 3 years after repayment plan or discharge. But discharge might also be decided without any repayment plan in Polish proceedings. So it might be like just 3 years for a debtor to be checked by others whether he had any financial troubles in case he decided to use consumer insolvency proceedings. But 10 years if the repayment plan is revoked. So that's coming back to the general role in that area. In case of disqualification, 3 years after the end of disqualification period, and 7 years in case of unsuccessful individual enforcement actions. If the debt is repaid, so the data is erased from the system in case of those information about the individual enforcement actions. Next slide, please. As to the other part of the system, so the system as it was designed at the beginning when we were preparing the restructuring law, so the system that is to support the courts and insolvency practitioners in dealing with these cases. The general purpose to create the system is to have the access to court files by internet. We know that insolvency proceedings in Poland, it was like these were proceedings that involved in some cases many participants, but to have real and on-time information about the proceeding, you had to come to court and see the files, and some of your decisions whether to intervene in the proceeding depended on the time when, for example, list of claims was lodged by the insolvency practitioner in the files. But then the information was made public, but not by communicating it to each and every one of participants, but just to make it public by press or by the official journal for commercial and court information. So accessibility to that proceedings were very limited. So to have the access to the internet is a major, I think, element that is the most, from the perspective of participants, is the most important part of that system and its functionality. The other thing that is important is to have the automatic transfer of data from insolvency proceedings to register. The courts in Poland to give information about insolvency to register, for example, the court register or to court register or to the register for natural person, they have to just fill out the forms and send it to these institutions, and they just have to enter it into the system. So so now these data will be processed automatically. As for the courts, we decided that by introducing the system that the court files will be fully digitalized. So in fact, it's a pioneering path that was taken here in our court system, because still we have generally we have paper files. So so all participants of the proceedings must load digitalized documents into the system, with some exceptions. So these are just the natural persons who are not conducting the business or they are not represented by professional lawyers. Then they may just send a paper document to the court, but then the court clerk must introduce this document into the system to digitalize it and to present it to the court. Also, as the system was being prepared and the legislation for that was being prepared, it was decided that the documents to be lodged are to be standardized to enable data processing. So so it's not like one form that is to be presented to the court, but we had to prepare the proper different forms depending on what kind of motion is to be lodged at the court. And also the system is supposed to help judges in creating the decision that is to be taken. So also it was decided that there must be forms for all types of decisions that are to be taken by the court, whether it is insolvency or restructuring or disqualification procedures. During the preparation of the system, the forms were being prepared with standardized squares where separate data should be provided in, so that then you can quickly process a lot of quantities of data, and to have the proper statistics and the proper way to, in fact, inform the participants of the proceedings. Also, to not only to just inform about the but also to create documents that are needed for the proper conduct of the proceedings. For example, list of claims. If you have to put at the beginning of the proceeding, when you just lodge a claim in the system, you put this data into a proper form, then insolvency practitioner will then not be forced to put it again into the list of claims, and then needs to be accepted by the judge. And then if it's accepted, then it goes to the, for example, distribution plan smoothly without any additional work on the side of insolvency practitioners or judge or clerks. So that's how this was designed, next slide, please. Just is to mention that we also when we are creating the system, we're also thinking about the EU regulation about the firstly the separate register for insolvency. It doesn't have to be separate, but then to also create the proper interconnectivity with the justice portal. It was decided that the system must be new, so then we were so willing to create something more ambitious than just use the registers that we had. But then I will next slide, please. I will tell you how what we have now. So you can see the internet address to that system, so you can check how it looks. It's only in Polish, so it's not easy to use by foreigners, but still it can be used by them. For the court, not all forms were prepared at the moment we entered the system entered into force. There were many problems with taking decisions by judges. So the fact that especially in insolvency, we got a panel of 3 judges taking the decision to open the insolvency proceeding of businesses. That was a huge problem for the courts to just make it possible. So the line of support was created during the introduction of the system, and these obstacles were being somehow managed by, in fact, for at least 3 months at the beginning. So just around the beginning of March, the system 2022 began working a bit better. But the most important thing was the accessibility to that system by the creditor, because at the beginning the module to accept the claims was not working properly. So, for example, we've got time limit to present claims when you got the publication of insolvency. Then you got 1 month to lodge your claim, and then you have to pay for your participation in the proceeding. And in fact, for these 2 months, it was not possible to do it properly in the system. So that was a huge problem. And then we had to accept, the courts had to accept, so as the practitioners had to accept, because we changed this. So it goes directly to the insolvency practitioner, but through the system. So they had to accept those that were in fact lodged after the deadline. There are many complaints about the way the data is presented. So if you got structured data, then you read it, and you cannot read it as a document. So it's not possible to read it as a PDF file. As for voting, that also has the system has the module for voting, but it still doesn't work. But so there are ways to circumvent this by voting outside the system, and then the data is put into that system. We had a problem with also foreign creditors, because in fact, as they are they have the possibility to lodge the claim as they are under EU regulation on paper, but we created the system that forced them to use the system. So, but of course, EU law prevails, and in fact, insolvency practitioners have to accept these data and in fact put it into the system by themselves. But there were many questions when the system began to function. how to in fact bypass all those elements that were created in fact to make it easy for the participants. In fact, that was the idea behind, for example, the standardization and creating of forms. But then some forms were not well prepared, or even there's lack of some of them still, because they have to be adapted in the system. And usually, and what is the most known way of solving this problem is to use the path of other files. So you put into the system a file that is not in a standardized form, so then it cannot be processed properly by the system. And in fact, the data must be put into a decision that is taken later in the proceeding by hand by insolvency practitioner or by judge. As we spoke, why our plans, our ambitious plans, still did not materialize in a proper way. We think that the problem is about wanting to solve all problems at once, and not to building the system step by step. So, for example, to work it properly, we need to have at least around 800 forms, both for participants applying or lodging the claims or motions in the system, and forms for judges and for clerks that are also taking some decision during the proceedings. And that was in fact connected with the willingness to have all data processed quickly, so to have them separated in elements that then can be used in different documents and different decisions that are taken later in the proceeding. That was, I think, a step too far and a bridge too far, I would say. We should rather concentrate at the beginning to copy what's going on in the court and the circulation of documents in the court, and then we would just need 40 forms, and then the system could just be prepared earlier, in fact, and then we could build up on our experience and adding some the most important forms in a way that then they could be used. So I think, and now we are in fact backpedaling a little bit by using this other file method just to make the proceeding going. And well, it's depending whom you ask, they will tell you that okay, you can check the what's going on in the case, so that's a much better situation than before. But then those who are directly involved in certain judges, especially not so young judges, or the insolvency practitioners, they are much more skeptical. They are complaining. They are saying, for example, they also complain about not have the possibility to just put the data automatically, for example, from Excel files. So they sometimes it's obligatory to provide a lot of data, especially if you've got the case of a bigger company, or more data is to be presented. So you cannot just use the connection, interconnectivity with the system that is used by insolvency practitioner. So still a lot of to be done. We are working on it. The developer is working on it. Each month the system is a bit better, but having in mind that we started in 1st December 2021 and still having so much troubles working on it, I think there was some miscalculation at the moment of preparing the concept, how the system should be built. And it also makes it harder for us now, for example, to make any changes into material law. So if you want to, for example, introduce some change in restructuring proceeding, for example, you have to just communicate it to the department that deals with the system, IT system, and then usually they will tell you that they need 2 years to prepare it properly. So you have to use some additional methods to convince them that still you can make it faster. So that's the important thing is to have to plan it and to see obstacles that may occur well, but then you have to just being thrown in at the deep end, you have to just try to solve these problems. I think there is no way out of digitalization. I think it's not to say that it shouldn't be done, but it should be done step by step rather than to make revolution, because in the end you still do it by step. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Emil. Thank you for the presentation. We hear some applause for you as well. I have several questions if you have still some few minutes to spend with us. You said that as a rule, the data is permanently stored in the system, but in Latvia, we have encountered this problem that you can't store data in regards to the GDPR regulation if there is not a sufficient reason for that. So please tell us how do you either overcome this or how do you address this issue with the GDPR?
Well, that's I think that we deal with it by the fact that what is made public is at some point erased from the, not erased, but not made, that is not available for the public. But that was, I think, technical problem. That was how it was presented to us. But I have to admit that I was not at the moment of creation of that system, and I was not responsible for it. I was only responsible for legislation in material law. So nobody presented me this problem now. So it was decided that at some earlier stage I will just may ask those who were responsible at that time, at the moment the system was being created, and the data there. I think that, as I remember, but that was not my sphere of responsibility at the moment. It was some technical issue that you have to have the data there to save the integrity of the system. But and that's why this data is there. So because there is some information about the company, information about the also about persons in that company, and then if you raise the data, then you will have the problem to have access to other data that is not sensitive. But I can just send you information how it was solved. Okay, so if you are interested, then I will present it. But that was not my direct. Nobody just flagged me with that problem.
Right. Okay. All right. So if we are more interested, we'll just contact you and see how we can copy the solution from you. You mentioned that all the participants in the system must log digitalized documents, obviously, but how about the general readiness in Poland for the society? Are they sufficiently digital, or there was some backlash or some resistance in terms of the submission of digital documents?
Well, as I said, there are some minor exceptions, not so minor probably, but anybody who's a natural person, not being represented by professional lawyer, and the person who's not conducting business may just send paper document, and the document is being digitalized by the court. So, so that's how it's solved. So,
Okay.
people are angry with the way, and those professionals are in the way you have to now put this digitalized documents in the system, but is complaining about the way it was prepared by our developer, and not the idea.
Okay. If we talk about the restructuring directive regarding data collection, will this system help Poland to ensure the implementation of the Article 29 of this directive? What do you think about it?
Well, depending at the end what the Commission will prepare. I think that maybe we will have to make some additional tweaks in the system to have the data as Commission wants. But as I remember, there's also the sample method. So this is the way we at the end we will I think try to solve this problem. But as I said, the idea when we were preparing the system was to have as much data as possible. So with these standardized forms, we should have so much data that then is just to apply the method how to get this data from the system. But there are some elements about as far as you remember for example, the size of the company, for example, and to how to probably that where we could have problems to apply to the directive.
Right. My last question here. You mentioned this enormous number, 800 different forms. And when building the system, have you been thinking about simplifying this so that you don't have so many of those?
Yeah.
Obviously, you have thought about it, right?
Well, that was a kind of dispute, and well, I was not well. There's no problem to tell it now, but because there was some willingness from one part of the Ministry of Justice to make it as audacious as possible. So there were some people who were saying that it's not that we will have trouble with that. There were those who were signaling this, and there were those who were not seeing the trouble. And I was once at the beginning in a team that met with the IT guys, and we asked questions: what is possible, what is not, and they told us that everything is possible. So some believed in that statement, and some did not. And those who believed, they had the upper hand in taking decision where what will be prepared in the system. So that's the explanation. My opinion is that is crazy. Yes. And I must say that the system works quite. I'd say that we saved this because of COVID a bit. Because in COVID, we, for example, created a very simplified restructuring proceeding that is little contact with court. It's just the opening by publication. So even there's no activity from the court, but just the use of the system to open the restructuring proceeding. And then you've got 4 months, and you have to just go to the court to accept the arrangement. And it's now that the most popular procedure, and it doesn't need forms. In fact, just no forms. So it saved the day. So because it was then put permanently into our law. So that's how I think we managed to circumvent the most difficult problem to have this plenty of forms 4 types of restructuring proceedings. Now, 3 other types of restructuring proceedings that we have are not used at all. And that's why we have no problem with lack of all forms that were needed to run those other proceedings. That's the explanation.
I see. I promised you that was the last question, but it wasn't. I have one more. Just came in from our audience. So, is this new register fully compliant with the what is prescribed in EU's regulation on insolvency proceedings and also EU's directive on preventive restructuring?
As for the system, well, there might be problem with this collection of data, as was said previously. It was designed to be fully compliant with the regulation. Maybe EU will find some deficiencies in it, but I hope not. As for the proceeding, insolvency restructuring proceeding, there is some incompliance, I would say. I don't want to invite EU to just to check us on that, but there is some lack of full compliance in case of restructuring. We got restructuring proceeding. It was designed during COVID. It's not perfectly compliant with EU regulation, but it's working. There are plenty of firms that is using it, and we will make some changes, but just a little bit. And I'm afraid that it might a bit make it more troublesome for the market. Yes, so not fully, but as registered, I think it's fully compliant.
What I hear is your approach is it's better done than perfect, right? In this,
yeah, that's right.
Great, Emil. We managed the presentation and the questions. It's all done. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you very much.
And if we'll have any further questions, we'll send in text.
Yes, please, I'll answer them.
All right. Have a good day. Bye-bye. Yes. So, as you see in the program, we have many more, well, not that many, but few more presentations in our conference today. And the next speaker comes from Lithuania and comes in person. So Lithuania is not that far away as Poland is. So, yeah, he's, well, let me read this. Head of the Analysis Division at the Authority of Audit, Accounting, Property Valuation, and Insolvency Management. Tadas Palevičius is our next speaker from Lithuania. The floor is yours.
So, labdien, good day, colleagues and those who are interested in solvency. First of all, the warmest congratulations to Latvian Insolvency Control Service for 20 years anniversary. And today I'm going to tell you about our whole path since the beginning till the present, emphasizing the most important steps we have done. So when we talk about insolvency in Lithuania, we have to go back to early 90s. 1993 can be considered the very beginning when the first enterprise bankruptcy law came into force. And it was a good start when the concept and practice system of bankruptcy was created and the limits of responsibilities and rights were established. Later, there were a few versions of the same law in 1997 and 2001. But since these are more legal aspects, I will not dwell on them. However, I will also mention some most important legal acts, in my opinion, in the following slides. Talking about digitalization, it started in the middle 80s, approximately 1996, 1997, when the first rudiments of the information systems were created, but with limited human and financial resources. Therefore, in principle, it can be considered an amateur activity because of often the aim was not systematically and promptly create a common system, but create ad hoc functionalities that were suddenly needed. The real beginning of digitalization can be considered 2007, and the first official information system for collecting and processing bankruptcy data, EMUS, was created. In Lithuanian, this abbreviation means Company Restructuring and Bankruptcy Information System. This start was important not only from the IT side, but also as a start that allowed for more efficient supervision. Faster processing of statistical data enabled policymakers to make operational data-driven decisions. Okay, let's go back to the scheme. And 2013 was important in two aspects. First of all, from the legal aspect and the IT. From a legal point of view, because the law on insolvency of natural persons has finally appeared, and it was possible to hope that Lithuanian citizens would run personal bankruptcy cases in Latvia less often, but that was only a hope. Still, a part of Lithuanian citizens are bankrupt tourists. On the other hand, closer cross-border relations are developing, so it's good news. More seriously, in 2013, an e-auction tool was also created, and in the next slide I will visually show the print screen. How does it look? It looks like this, and e-auction was a big push forward as the bidding system became more transparent, and moreover, with the passage of time, this tool has become very popular and now among people, known among people. Many different assets can be bought there. I mean, like transport, real estate, shares, IT equipment, and so on. And the fact that it is functionally quite convenient and has all the most important search attributes that meet the requirements of a modern and advertisement portal has contributed to its success. You can find here bets, time remaining until the end of the auction. Other important parameters can be seen every second. And e-auction is also important is that none of the interest parties have questions about transparency and why this particular platform has chosen to organize the auction. As a fact, I will mention that it is really popular, and I guess yesterday I checked the numbers and I have found more than 800 valid advertisements. So if anyone wants to see how does it look in reality, here's the link. You can also choose the English version and to go through this website. Okay, let's move on. In 2015, the selection program for bankruptcy administrators appears. And in my personal opinion, the emergence of this tool, of course, with a legal basis, was one of the most important in the context of digitalization and transparency. The initiative to introduce some kind of system for the selection of bankruptcy administrators came from our president, and therefore the political support was very strong, and it was only necessary to come up with the system itself and implement it technically. As I already said, the system has become much more transparent because the selection has become fully automated and depends only on the system's algorithm and not on subjective factors. However, the big challenge was how to include individuals, I mean natural persons, and the companies or legal entities in the same selection process. And a system was invented that calculates points for the natural person depending on the size of the bankrupt company. For example, 1 point goes for a small company, 2 for a medium one, and 4 for a large one. And that score is reflected in the workload. And experience points are obtained after completing the process. In the case of legal entities, it was decided to include all the employee workloads in the amount and to be divided by the number of employees. So to ensure the transparency of the system, a selection protocol is created after each selection process. I'll show you it a bit later. Also, since the data is public, we actually have about 600 auditors. Is it auditors? I mean, bankruptcy administrators, because they always check the results, especially if they lose the contest. If they have the slightest question, they turn to us. As a rule, there are no problems with the operation of the program, except for the interpretation of legal act in specific situations and how it is implemented in program's algorithm. However, there is no doubt about transparency itself. Okay. As I already mentioned, the system. Oh, okay, I need to go back, sorry. As I already mentioned, the system is designed so that after winning the selection, the workload increases and the chances of winning the next selection decrease accordingly. However, once the process is complete, the workload is lifted off the legal entity and adds to the experience. Therefore, there is an interest in concluding the proceedings faster, because in this way, the chances of winning increase and the state and the creditors win because the cases are concluded more quickly. Okay, the next important digitalization step is modernization of the already mentioned IT system EMUS, and it became to AVNIS. And AVNIS has become a comprehensive tool which also includes the areas of audit and property valuation and expanded functionality for performing inspections. It is also planned to fully digitalize the selection process for planned inspections in the near future. And very important to emphasize that the system is focused on complete transparency. So our employees practically do not have the ability to enter the data. Exceptions only for inspections, fines, and license information. However, for example, all information regarding the reports provided by administrators on insolvency proceedings is obtained without the possibility of correction. Employees have only one option: to accept the report or return it to the sender for correction. It is also important that AVNIS data is audited. I mean, all actions, who perform them and when, are stored. And if there's a slight suspicion of mistake or employee abuse, it can be checked. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Although my presentation is focused on digitalization, but I cannot forget the law on insolvency and legal persons, and why it is so important. It combined two licenses, bankruptcy and restructuring, into one, insolvency. It is also important to know that the procedures for transitioning from restructuring to bankruptcy and vice versa have been simplified. We hope that this will have a synergy effect in the long run, although we have to admit that restructuring is still very unpopular in Lithuania. Also, this law laid the legal basis for a creation of new IT tools as new duties of administrators were established. For example, to submit monthly reports on the progress of insolvency process. Okay, let's move on. In 2021, the insolvency administrator selection program was updated, and some principles of how the algorithm works have been changed. For example, how differently the workload is calculated, etc. However, again, all changes were made with serious legal justification. In this case, a government resolution. it is also important that public authorities, including our Minister of Finance, hear the comments of the market participants and take them into account when developing the legislation and implement it. And here I tried to show very briefly the main steps of selection program. You can see it. Of course, it's only main steps, because otherwise it would be tough to understand. But what I'm trying to say that most of these steps are actually digitalized, and only the steps which is impossible to make digital is still not digitalized. For example, the court's decision to open the case or not, or to push the button when they start the selection process. You know, you cannot put into the algorithm such things, but all the calculation, all the other things are fully digitalized. And as I promised, you can see the sample of our protocol. It's only the first page, and it shows. You can see here many information. For example, the date, the company, which bankrupt, the name, the code, address, also some financial data, the property, the worth of the wealth, creditors' requirements, creditors' numbers, and on the bottom you can see the administrators who are participating in the contest, the group. The group means that, for example, C, it's a large administrator, and there are many other information, for example, workload, as I said. And all these numbers, which are blue ones, you can check. It's like active links, so you can check if it's calculated correctly, if you want. Yeah, and in summary, the reason why this product was so successful. So first of all, that there's a lot of political support till now. Also, the realization that IT solutions need a strong legal basis. And the interaction between these two components is extremely important. Also, avoiding any possible speculation about transparency, the system works in such a way that there is no human factor involved, except for the steps, as I said, that are impossible to put in the algorithm. I hope you are still awake, because not so much left. Yeah. Okay. And now we are on to 2022, 2023, and this year we have created a restructuring wizard, and next year we will finish. Actually, at the end of this year, and next year we will start insolvency portal. So now about each other very briefly. Restructuring wizard is intended for small and medium-sized companies to objectively assess their financial situation. The wizard may suggest restructuring as an option. In order to prepare a restructuring plan, the restructuring wizard will help you to do this. And it also contains summarized information on insolvency, like legal acts, etc. So here you can see the main parts of this wizard. As I said, the first part is for entering data and getting the answer if you have, let's say, some financial problems, and you can get the suggestion to think about restructuring as an option. The second part is for preparing the plan if you want to do that, and the third part is for aggregated information. And here's an example. How does it look? As I mentioned, in order to self-assess your condition, you need to go through 10 steps to answer all these questions and fill the form. And what is important, that you don't need to register to use this wizard. Not summarized data is stored, so complete anonymity is ensured. Therefore, we hope that this will increase confidence in the tool and will lead to more use of it. And all this will lead to the popularity of restructuring, because in Lithuania it's still very unpopular. And now briefly about Insolvency Portal. It is important that Insolvency Portal is related to the previously mentioned law on insolvency of legal persons, and the portal itself is focused on protecting the interests of the clients' creditors. We are currently running this project, and as I said, we hope to finish it till the end of this year. Insolvency Portal itself consists of 3 large blocks. It's a general information available for anyone who wants it, information or functionality for supervisory authority employees, insolvency administrators, employees of the courts, and the third most important is information for the participants of the case, which is not accessible for anyone else. Now the participants in the case can get the most of information using our, for example, court IT system, but we hope that our added value will be that it will be possible to find not only court decisions, other documents, but also visualizations, graphs, summarized information, open data, and so on. As an example, I can give you, if I'm the participant of the case, and my administrator carries out the process for 1 year, and the law provides for a period of 2 years. How should I know if he works efficiently? Yeah, and using this portal, when I see the aggregated information, some statistics, I can compare and for example, ask him what's the reason why he's running the process longer, comparing to the average of Lithuania. And there is, I think, the last slide. Just very briefly, you can see the diagram, how many integrations we plan with other information systems. So therefore, we hope that after the completion of this project, this tool will be really useful with relevant information and recognized by the users. So thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Tadas. Before we let you go back to the seat here in our conference room, a few questions that have come in from our audience. What about the selecting the administrators for the procedures? You said that you follow the size of the enterprise, and is it sufficient enough as a criteria? Because there could be cases with this, I don't know, smaller company with very sophisticated legal procedures and everything that is related to that.
I would answer that the only one exception is when we talk about banks and other financial institutions. There are some limits, like you cannot get the legal entity from the financial sector if you have no experience. So when the judge runs the selection, he can put a mark that you need to have such an experience.
Right.
But it's the only one exception, I think.
Okay. We asked the same question to our Polish colleague Emil about the system's compliance with the EU's regulation on insolvency proceedings and directives on preventive restructuring. So what about Lithuanian system? Is it compliant?
I would say mostly it is compliant, but there might be some let's say challenges, because some of the data is stored in other institutions' IT systems, especially in the courts IT system. So we need to cooperate and to change to make integrations between IT systems, and well, I'm not sure if no changes must be made in the future in our system, but hopefully not.
Right. There's one more question about selection process. What's your feeling? Is it viewed in general by involved parties as an efficient process? Isn't it too time-consuming, perhaps?
Well, as my previous colleague said, it was a political decision how to run the selection program and what the principles should be laid down. But I think that it doesn't take so much time or consuming much time, because most of the steps are digitalized fully. So I think that in the light of the idea, which was or the principles which were agreed to implement, it's one of the best ways to implement it.
So it's okay. All right. Yeah. Okay, thanks for coming, and I hope you stay for some time in Riga and enjoy its beauties that we can offer.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, it's time to broaden our perspectives a little bit, so we will not focus on a single country during our next presentation. That would be run by the representative of European Bank for Reconstruction and Development. And the topic goes like this. It's very interesting. Going digital on insolvency, selected experiences from emerging economies where this bank invests. So our next speaker, Catherine Bridge-Zoller. Hello.
Hello, and thank you very much for the introduction. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I hope that you can hear me.
Yes, it's all good.
Okay, excellent. So I would just like to start by saying that I'm delighted to be able to participate in today's event on behalf of the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, where I am a senior counsel specializing in insolvency and restructuring, and I've been working for the last 10 years. So I am speaking to you actually today for the last time from our EBRD offices by Liverpool Street, as tomorrow we are moving across the waters to Canary Wharf. Before I begin this talk, I would just like to thank the Minister of Justice, the Ministry of Justice, and Ms. Stein at the Insolvency Control Service for organizing, I think what we would all agree is an incredibly exciting event on this highly topical issue of digitalization and interaction of that with insolvency. And congratulations, of course, on the 20th anniversary of the Insolvency Control Service. Today, so next slide, please. Today, I will speak first about the EBRD's new digitalization transition mandate and how it links with insolvency standards and changes in the EU. Then I will briefly present the main findings of our 2022 assessment and study on insolvency frameworks, which focused on these business reorganization or restructuring procedures, which the Lithuanian representative indicated are not always that popular in a lot of the economies where EBRD is active. And then finally, I will discuss new EBRD policymaking initiatives in the area of insolvency and try to map out where we see the future development and reform perspectives in the insolvency space. Next slide, please. So the advantage of being at the EBRD is being able to witness, of course, at a high level, what is going on in terms of policy making and trends in insolvency across a wide range of jurisdictions, because we cover, of course, a number of EU countries, but also non-EU. And here you can see a map of the 37 countries where the EBRD invests, including in Central Europe and the Baltic states. And of course, you can see here that Russia and Belarus, which were countries of operation, are no longer receiving any funding for projects or technical cooperation. In fact, we've closed our offices there. And in Latvia, I have personally been working with the Ministry of Justice on 2 EU-funded projects in insolvency since 2019. And we've had an excellent cooperation. Next slide, please. So before continuing with the presentation, I wanted to share a few terms that I have found useful when thinking about digitalization, because at the beginning, when we started talking about it from a policy-making perspective, there was some confusion between were we digitalizing, were we digitizing, and now we have this new concept of digital transformation. So I think that the most useful definition for me of digitalization is here at the top of this slide, and it's really the use of digital technologies to change a business model and provide new revenue and value producing opportunities as in the process of moving to a digital business. So that's very much what the EBRD is thinking about, because we're a bank investing in primarily in businesses across our economies of operation. But of course, you can't digitalize if you have everything still in paper format. And I still remember visiting not that long ago some countries where, you know, going to the courts, you would see just enormous piles of documents, apparently perfectly filed, but still, you know, the extent to which paper still continues to be dominant. And really, digitalization is now a very important part of the EBRD's strategy. So we every 5 years we set out our strategic and capital framework, and this time we identified digitalization as one of the 3 cross-cutting themes that we need to work on as an institution with national authorities in order to bring about positive change. So we are very much looking to support national authorities and businesses that want to digitalize. And we are also supporting, of course, another 2 areas which I think are very important alongside digitalization, and these are promoting green, low-carbon economies, and also promoting equality of opportunity of access to skills and employment, especially amongst young people and women and underserved members of the community. Next slide, please. So this sets out just some more details about the EBRD's objectives and our thinking around digitalization, which we tried to consolidate in this paper. And I think here I should just mention briefly why the EBRD was established. We were established in 1991 against the background of the collapse of the former USSR, and we were set up as a multilateral development bank designed to foster transition towards open market economies and to promote private and entrepreneurial objectives. Now, over the years, this transition mandate has evolved, and we now focus on a series of qualities, which include helping our economies to become more competitive, well-governed, green, inclusive, resilient, and integrated. And digital transition really cuts across all of these. So we have 3 areas of focus now for our strategy on digitalization. The first is foundation, so trying to lay the foundations of a sustainable and inclusive digital economy by promoting the right kinds of policies and regulations. The second is adapting, helping existing organizations to adapt to digitalize their services. And finally, innovation, so really supporting those digital first clients and businesses to help them to grow. Next slide, please. So I just wanted to mention a few examples of some of the digital initiatives we've been involved in recently before narrowing the scope to talk about insolvency. So in Armenia, we've been involved in a foundational project which looks at trying to modernize the power supply network of Armenia. The example in Uzbekistan you see here is about adaptation. So we've helped a bank, so TBC Bank, offer more innovative digital products to its retail and micro and small business clients. And finally, in Turkey, we've been investing in equity in an e-scooter and e-moped initiative. And alongside these three sort of streams of activity in digital programs, we have been very active on the policy-making side. And I think the most relevant areas are really around court systems. So at the moment, we are looking at the feasibility. I think we've done the feasibility assessment. We're moving ahead in Ukraine. So Ukraine is very much still in our the center of our operations, and we are looking at helping Ukraine set up a fully online court for small claims, just to accelerate access to justice, improve access to justice. And we've also been very innovative on the procurement side, so helping to set up digital procurement platforms in line with international practices, and also turning those platforms around. For example, here I think on the slide you see the example of Ukraine, turning those around so that platforms are also can be used to sell. So we developed in Ukraine Prozoro Sale, which not only sold the assets of all these insolvent banks in Ukraine that happened after the 2014 crisis, but also non-performing loans and foreclosed assets. So in a sense related to insolvency. Next slide, please. So now narrowing the focus and thinking about what can digitalization bring to insolvency. I think we've heard a lot of different ideas and thoughts today. And I mean, we tried to sort of distill these into 4 key areas. I think here, the first is really around efficiency and timely resolution. So what I have heard over the course of my career at EBRD and going from jurisdiction to jurisdiction is really a complaint that often insolvency processes are very slow and time consuming. And I think what's very important about digitalization is that you can track all of this much more easily when you have, for example, a digital court case management system. You can see very clearly the progression of the case. You can also be much more efficient in communicating with creditors and so forth. And I think there's also a significant potential for cost benefits, cost savings, because of course with digitalization, as we've also heard, I think we heard the Minister of Justice mention that this morning, it also enables us to reduce perhaps some of the manual human labor involved, also in from the perspective of a bankruptcy administrator, or from the perspective of a court or supervisor, such as the Insolvency Control Service. And I think we also heard this morning about the new auction system, and how really digitalization can also help reduce costs in insolvency by perhaps increasing, or it helps to increase the potential returns to creditors in an insolvency process if that auction system is able to create a more vibrant marketplace for potential purchasers and investors. So finally, the second two blocks are really around greater transparency. This has been an issue for many jurisdictions where perhaps creditors don't receive full reports on the progress of the insolvency case, don't have access to information, receive reports late. And I think digitalization is very important for improving that transparency and accountability as well. And if as long as systems are aligned, and there is always an alignment within a country as well as outside, I think it can also really be important on a cross-border level, and that really has been that agenda is being pushed by the EU. Next slide, please. So at the time of the pandemic, it was a chance for us to also reflect on what we consider our core principles for insolvency. So the EBRD, like a number of international organizations, such as the World Bank, we engage in standard setting. We find it useful to set out some principles that we follow for our projects. It helps us just to distill that thinking. And when the COVID pandemic hit, it was very much clear that we all had to, we had to transfer to remote working. I worked from home for a very long time, and everything had to be done remotely. So we created a new principle. This is all developed in-house, and it was really about trying to reflect our understanding from projects. But we created this new principle, 14, which is really about it's about digitalization, and we believe that a modern forward-thinking insolvency system should adopt digital tools to increase the transparency, efficiency, and also cost effectiveness of insolvency procedures. So for the reasons I described earlier. Next slide. And this reference to digitalization, you can find it in other international standards. Often in passing. I mean, UNCITRAL has been extremely active, I think, on coming up with model laws on electronic signatures and electronic commerce. It has looked and considered the role of digitalization and, above all, the use of electronic means as part of its recent expansion of the guide on insolvency to micro and small enterprises. And the World Bank also references this, so where appropriate, using electronic means and tools, particularly for simplified proceedings. And I think UNCITRAL has been involved on a really important initiative, and I think this is another area just to think about, is sharing international jurisprudence. So UNCITRAL has a database of insolvency judgments that are relevant, for example, for its model law on cross-border proceedings. And I think digitalization, of course, national insolvency systems still look very different, but there are some areas of common interest where such as cross-border insolvency, where it's really important to be able to share information as well, and to use these sort of digital platforms. Next slide, please. So I'm sure many of you are familiar with the EU's digital agenda, but I think I just want to reference that in this presentation because I'm very grateful that the EU has now started to get involved, particularly recently in relation to the Preventive Restructuring Directive, because it's made it a lot easier for me as a policymaker, not only in the EU but also outside the EU, where EU legislation is very influential. And it's clear from the regulation on insolvency proceedings, the recast regulation from 2015, and also the 2019 directive on preventive restructuring, that the EU is trying to increase the pace of digitalization of insolvency registers and databases. And this is because, without data and without information, it's just simply not possible for the EU to benchmark national insolvency systems and to understand what needs to change from a policy perspective. And it's this divergence amongst insolvency systems that's seen as being one of the significant barriers alongside, for example, tax, to the EU's push for a capital markets union. And outside of the EU, I see particularly, in countries such as Georgia, Moldova, Ukraine, where EBRD invests, the influence of the EU and this desire to align with the acquis. So I think there is definitely going to be some movement here, I think, to follow this the regulation, the directive. And it certainly with the regulation, it's a very positive development that certain data will be centralized and made publicly available, and there will be this interconnection of insolvency registers, which is still, I think, in process. And with the directive, I think you see in a way the ambitions of the EU to at a future point, for example, to collect information on recoveries and insolvency, but you see that they haven't made certain data fields mandatory yet, because there's still quite a way to go. Next slide, please. So I think here this is just this just sets out a little bit of information on some of the new or existing court digital plans by the EU. And what we know at EBRD from the assessment work, the research we do across all of these jurisdictions, across the 37 countries where we're investing at the moment, is that insolvency is really a court-driven process. So any digitalization changes that affect the courts have a very important positive effects for insolvency processes. Of course, the only issue is that there is at the same time a push to or a policy initiative to try and encourage for more decision making and agreement between a debtor and its majority creditors outside of a formal process before it even reaches the court. So the so-called pre-packaged reorganization plans, which I think in Latvia are these extrajudicial legal protection proceedings. So the idea that you can do some of the work outside the court because it's more efficient and also potentially less public and value destructive. So I think but anyway, I think these court digitalization initiatives in the EU, such as the, starting with this recast regulation on court cooperation, which came into effect in March, and the plans that the Commission has for speeding up digitalization of justice, will have tremendous implications also for insolvency. The next slide, please. So here I just wanted to say a few words without, maybe I probably won't be able to go into a huge amount of detail, but the EBRD recently published, I published an assessment, a really detailed piece of research across all of the jurisdictions where the EBRD invests and has invested. And it didn't focus on digitalization, but I think some of the findings from the assessment give us an indication of how digitalized our countries, the countries are where we invest, and what kind of digitalization gap exists. I think what we've heard today from Latvia and also from the results of our assessment really show that Latvia is very advanced in terms of digitalization of insolvency compared with other jurisdictions where EBRD invests. Okay, so the assessment was run across the whole EBRD regions, and we developed a methodology for scoring, which included some objective as well as subjective factors. We looked at legislation on the books. We analyzed this thoroughly, so all the different national legislation in translation and in original where we had native speakers. We consulted with at least 2 law firms per jurisdiction, so everything was verified, and actually where we could, we also consulted with national authorities. So we're very grateful that the Ministry of Justice of Latvia was able to look at our overview of the Latvian insolvency framework. And we looked at scoring across the structure of reorganization procedures. So these are the procedures. We were focused very much on procedures aimed at rescuing businesses. We didn't look directly at liquidation. And we analyzed also how flexible, how efficient, and how effective they were. Next slide, please. So here you can see the overall scoring of the assessment. I hope you can see it. It's a bit small on my screen, but you can see that Latvia scored very, very highly. I mean, Latvia came in seventh place. And the little yellow bar that you can see at the top was a bonus score that we awarded to countries that publish clear and comprehensive insolvency data online. I mean, there were some marks for countries that provided anyway, you know, and provided in paper form, but we were very much focused on the online publication of insolvency data. Next slide, please. So I think here it's, as I say, we didn't focus directly on digitalization, but there is a correlation between how much data was disclosed and also how digital the insolvency framework is. And out of all of the EBRD countries of operation, the existing countries where we invest, the 37 countries, only 4 of those countries that were included in the assessment, so Greece, Latvia, Slovak Republic, and Slovenia, had an electronic dedicated insolvency register in electronic form. Czech Republic has since become a country of operation and does have a dedicated electronic insolvency register, but was not part of the assessment this time. But it's quite striking that 10 out of all of the EBRD countries where we invest publish absolutely no insolvency data, and there's no evidence in these countries that there is much in the way of centralization of that information and data. And courts are a very important data point. We've also heard about bankruptcy administrators, of course, and their reporting, and that they're also very important for data purposes. But there were very, very significant divergences also within courts regarding data. So in some cases it was centralized. So for example, in Ukraine, it was the Supreme Court. But in other countries like Moldova, each court was responsible for gathering its own information on insolvency, and there wasn't a centralized authority. And I think it is difficult to compare insolvency systems given the differences in structure. but it may be possible with this data in the future, especially if there is greater convergence. And I think that will, or is likely to gradually take place at EU level. And as part of this, we really do need to think about where the data comes from and the need to invest further in court systems and in bankruptcy administrators, as well as in sort of digital IT. Next slide, please. So here is just an overview of, with a breakdown of the data transparency score for Latvia. So Latvia scored 10 out of 10 because it publishes, it centralizes and maintains its insolvency data. It publishes comprehensive data on everything. It regularly updates the data in real time, and it has the possibility of both aggregating and disaggregating data. And this is for some countries, this is quite advanced because, as I've mentioned, centralization is an issue for many countries, and also what is an issue is this aggregation or disaggregation, because these prepackaged reorganization plans that I mentioned earlier, you know, these plans that are conducted mostly out of court and then submitted to the court for approval. These are present in about half of the countries where EBRD operates. But sometimes information or data around these plans is not captured. For example, in Serbia, it's not currently captured, but they want to do so going forward. Next slide, please. So we have a new digital hub at EBRD now, which helps us to have a better oversight of all the digital projects we're doing, and we have a new investment pool for non-EU countries primarily, which is all about investing in technical cooperation projects that promote new technologies. And here I just wanted to give you a few examples of some of the projects I'm working on, just so you see the types of policy initiatives. So we have an ongoing project with the Ministry of Justice in Latvia, which is looking at designing information sources on insolvency, because we know that for people and businesses to take earlier action, they also need that information. They need to understand what is still considered in many ways a very technical area of law and practice, and it's obviously not part of the day-to-day operations of businesses or the day-to-day lives of consumers, thankfully. So here you can see, you know, one type of initiative is this design of information sources that really capitalize on digitalization as a means of communication. So websites, and it also gave me an idea for a project. So the Latvian project gave me an idea for a project which I've developed in Georgia, Moldova, and Ukraine. And this project has been around delivering legal and business advice in sort of generic form to businesses, to help them especially to small and medium-sized businesses, to help them adapt in the COVID and the post-COVID environment. And it includes advice on how to digitalize. The second type of initiative which we're seeing, and I think we'll see more of, is around the creation of new IT and digital governance models for regulation of insolvency. Now, when we did the assessment, Latvia was among 9 countries which have a dedicated insolvency regulator. So regulation is still an area that needs more development, but as it does develop, and I think there are real merits in regulating and having oversight of insolvency, I think we'll see more demand for IT and digital governance tools to enable this risk-based supervision, remote supervision that we heard this morning, and also in Serbia, where we're working at the moment with the Bankruptcy Supervision Agency. There is the agency has got a new role of producing statistics on bankruptcy. and it's looking at using its IT systems to track various data and to understand better the impact of the insolvency processes on different types of company, for example, and different members of society, for example, women. We're also looking very much at electronic platforms. This is really in relation to the sale of non-performing loans. So it's connected with insolvency, but not directly insolvency related. And I led a project in Armenia, which was around helping the insolvency court, which was a newly created court, think about how to digitalize its operations. Next slide, please. So here, I just wanted to mention that we're doing some research at the moment within the EBRD, looking at what the level of digitalization of court systems looks like across EBRD economies. And this is really part of this initiative that I mentioned earlier about the Ukrainian online court for small claims. So we're trying to also get a better sense of if this takes off in Ukraine, where in the future, where where we should also consider doing a similar project. And we're trying to understand how advanced the different court systems are. And there are, here you can see on the slide that there are a few countries that we've identified which have electronic court case management systems, such as neighboring Estonia. Next slide, please. So undoubtedly, as we've heard today, the pandemic has spurred on this growing awareness of the need to digitalize and to transform our ways of working. And it was the perfect occasion to test it all out. I mean, we didn't have much warning. It was considered a bit of a force majeure. So it was the perfect occasion to switch to these online hearings and filings. And in fact, it was possible in a majority of EBRD economies for hearings to take place remotely. And we know this because we looked into this as part of a recent survey with our team of economists that we've been supporting. And we know from this that what was quite interesting for me was only 18 of the countries where EBRD invests out of the 37 introduced emergency bankruptcy legislation, or insolvency legislation. It was much more popular to introduce banking regulations and tax amendments. So 18 of the countries did introduce emergency insolvency legislation, including Latvia, and Latvia and Ukraine were the only two that introduced measures to allow e-voting by creditors, which I think have been retained in Latvia. And we still need to do more research into this to understand the need. Next slide, please. So this is the final slide, really, and it's just tried to set out some thoughts here on what the future looks like for policymakers such as myself, and where we as an institution might want to focus our efforts. So I think we are seeing definitely a move towards greater digitalization of insolvency. There's tremendous potential. There's still a long way to go, I think, for a number of countries, such as and regions as well, where we've seen lower rates of digitalization, such as the southern and eastern Mediterranean region, and North Africa, where EBRD invests. But digitalization can bring a lot of benefits. So we can look at electronic insolvency and pre-insolvency processes. We've seen this also with early warning systems, so how to use digitalization also to trigger warnings that businesses need to take action. Electronic court case management, which is a much broader topic, but will have a significant impact on insolvency cases when it extends to insolvency cases. the use of digitalization to carry out e-sales or auctions in insolvency proceedings, which are typically, I mean, this is another debate, but typically auctions or sales are conducted, even of secured property, are conducted by through a court-managed or overseen process or involving a court official, such as a bailiff. So I think the digitalization process can bring tremendous benefits in terms of increasing the potential acquirers, helping to anonymize, as we heard earlier, the acquirers, because sometimes turning up and going to auctions have been issues with, you know, in some countries, and hopefully achieve better returns if we're looking at a liquidation to creditors. Digital reporting, I think, will be extremely important. Of course, for digital reporting, we also need to think about meaningful reporting and trying to encourage not just you know, pro forma reporting, but something that actually speaks to creditors and other interested stakeholders. Collection of data is also important, because we can, with digitalization, try to look at centralizing the various data fields and sources. We can also look then at the future at also analyzing and producing more informed statistics. So there are numerous benefits. You know, primarily much more informed insolvency policies and decision making, because insolvency has sometimes been done a little bit in the dark. Greater transparency, and also facilitation of cross-border proceedings, provided there is a certain harmonized approach. But two areas of constraints to mention, I think, that are particular to the insolvency field, and it's around this out-of-court proceedings or negotiations, and some aspects that may remain outside of the court sphere, either because the court isn't overseeing it or because another administrative authority is, and there needs to be a connection. And also the respect for fundamental rights, because I think that means that the paper-based options, and maybe also the sort of duality of approach, is likely to remain for some time. And that's it. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Catherine. We have some questions that came in. I believe you actually touched upon those topics already, but let's just maybe summarize again. For example, how will EBRD promote greater digitalization of insolvency through your policy making? I think that was in the last slide you explained this, but maybe we can just do a recap.
Thank you very much. I think the last slide just shows that there's so many different areas that where we could focus, and so part of it is also about deciding, you know, what next. I think next for us is really building on the assessment that we conducted, and I'm at the moment, I've just started a new project which will look at preparing a guide to insolvency regulators, explaining so with an overview of where the trends are in terms of capturing insolvency data, why we should capture the data, how digitalization can support regulatory functions, and what they can do with the data. So that's my next initiative, is really around data, because I just see this big data gap, and I see that digitalization is essential, really, for closing that gap, and also dealing with the issue that we face in a lot of jurisdictions, that they don't have the human resources to properly regulate insolvency proceedings, and we need to think a lot more about how we can use digital tools to maximize what resources they have. Thank you.
Right. Another one, perhaps again, similar case of doing a recap. What's your bank's strategy for future insolvency projects? Is there a general strategy at all?
I would say it's still under development. So we are looking, I think, primarily at this data regulatory angle that I discussed, and also, as you may know, or some of you know, we have been very much focused also on insolvency practitioners, so or bankruptcy administrators. So I think we will be focusing primarily, or I will be focusing primarily on projects with regulators, so looking at what systems they have for effective supervision, and also production of statistics and explanations related to the use of the insolvency framework, and at the same time also pursuing projects that focus on building capacity among insolvency practitioners, and looking in particular at the standardization of reporting and forms that are used by insolvency practitioners within an insolvency process. Because I think we've also heard from this morning's discussion that standardization as well is essential for a full digitalization of insolvency systems.
What is your view on how digitalization could facilitate cross-border insolvency proceedings between different countries?
Oh, well, at the moment we see big gaps of course the EU has its own cross-border insolvency framework with the regulation, but we don't, in doing this assessment, one of the aspects that we looked at and we've been asked to look at in more depth by UNCITRAL is around cross-border insolvency, because the provisions around cross-border insolvency are really underdeveloped outside of the EU. We did some research looking at, for example, the Eurasian Union, if there's anything that's coming out of that, but so, to our knowledge, there's nothing. You have a number of countries that have incorporated the model law on cross-border insolvency into the UNCITRAL model law into their insolvency frameworks, but you don't see a lot of it's not that common, and it looks very different from country to country. So I think before we can even talk about what digitalization can do, we also need to think about that groundwork that needs to be done on the legal side, and also whether we can promote as EBRD greater adoption of the model law.
Right. To sum up our little conversation here, what's your general feeling? Is Europe ready for digitalization in insolvency, or we still want to feel, paper documents in our hands?
Well, I think it's interesting. I think in all of the discussion around digitalization, you always have to think about people. And when I have in my work, it's depended very much on from jurisdiction to jurisdiction. But in some jurisdictions, the average age, I think, for example, in Croatia, the average age of bankruptcy administrators is over 60. I mean, you have to look at also age and generation and this in this digitalization discussion, and it's very difficult when you have, for example, this kind of revolution that's taking place around digitalization, to bring everyone with you and to be inclusive. So I think we are embracing digitalization, but I think the process itself will not take place from today to tomorrow. It's going to take some time. Exactly how much time I don't know, but it will involve, I think, new people entering the profession, for example, of insolvency practitioners, new approaches among the judiciary, and so on. I mean, it varies from jurisdiction to jurisdiction. I think the Baltics and Latvia are very much advanced. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you also for the assessment. 10 out of 10. You don't hear that about Latvia being 10 out of 10. It's really nice.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're
Congratulations.
yeah, thank you. So you're moving to Canary Wharf, is that correct?
We are, yes. I have to pack up the rest of my office today because we have a we have a deadline, 6 p.m. London time. We have to, yes, we have to move, and we're moving now to quite different offices. So I think, again, reflective of the changes that businesses are going through, we will be doing a lot more hot desking. We will have more breakout spaces. I think the new design reflects the changes in the ways of working.
Right. Yeah, I mean, the area is nice indeed. So best of luck with that. And we will not keep you any longer from packing your stuff. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I will join and listen to the rest. Yeah,
right.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. We shall now switch to our last speaker today. We will hear about the practical experience and insights on how the digitalization process has been implemented to insolvency in Czech Republic. And the speaker is coming from the Ministry of Justice of Czech Republic, Mr. Ondrej Zezulka. Hello.
Hello, and greetings to all of you. First of all, thank you very much for an invitation, and my sincere regards to organizers allowing us to attend virtually. So it's great. It's really digital, and I really appreciate the efforts. My presentation will concern the practical experience on how digitalization has been implemented so far in the Czech Republic. First of all, I'd like to mention that I'm a lawyer, senior counselor at the legislative department. So I'm not technically IT expert, but as usual, I guess we who are making up the legal provisions are usually those who make tasks for those who implement them in the real practice. So let's say in past years, I was involved in many IT projects, and my point of view and my angle of view will be determined by the fact that I'm like a low-level worker in the field of the ministry. So let's begin. Next slide, please. First of all, it's necessary to say that the digitalization of insolvency area began in 2008 in the Czech Republic with the new and quite modern Insolvency Act, which replaced the previous and quite ancient provisions. So, having this Insolvency Act, the necessity for creating insolvency register appeared. So let's present the playground here. Let's present the stakeholders, and then as the presentation will move on, we'll see how did the digitalization affect them. On the upper side of the pyramid structure, there's a Ministry of Justice as a single and sole administrator of Insolvency Register. It's the key holder of the system. It is responsible for all adjustments to the functioning of the register. It also implements the new legislation and providing support to courts. In the Czech Republic, there are 8 insolvency courts regionally distributed all over the area of the Republic. And on those courts, there are approximately 100 judges. So as it might appear, previously and in past years, a broad variety of approaches emerged, since there are young judges that are eager to use digitalization and well, the older ones who sticks to the standard hard copy files. Then to supplement the courts and judges, there are over 400 insolvency practitioners, which are in our system, all of them entrepreneurs. They are obliged to file the papers and documents via electronic means. In the Czech Republic, a long time ago, a system of so-called data boxes was established. That means that any person, both natural or legal, can submit any document to the state authority or court without any payment and in real time. So this is the system how that allows creditors, debtors, and practitioners to communicate with courts, and so far it's going very well. It's swift and it cut a lot of costs. It's necessary to say regarding this that courts are maintaining insolvency files still in some sort of hybrid form. Let me explain it. As was previously mentioned by my previous speaker, Czech Republic has a dedicated insolvency register, and it's full of documents in PDF form. But parallelly, insolvency courts maintain the files in hard copy forms. So anything that will come to the court is both printed and set to the file and published on insolvency register. So this is the first, I guess, virtue of our system, which will be overcome, I hope, soon. Talking about insolvency field in the Czech Republic, it's necessary to say that there are quite plenty of proceedings opened every year. It's almost 30,000 proceedings a year, and within those proceedings, approximately 300,000 creditors applies their application of receivables. So a huge amount of stakeholders in here and huge amounts of documents and papers. Regarding this, we, as well as Poland, as Emil Štěpánek said previously, introduced standardized PDF forms for the most prevalent submissions. And so far, while calculating the impacts, more than 500,000 forms are submitted every year. So I will talk about the forms later, so I will skip this. But it's necessary to say that most of them are sent and used within the proceedings led against natural persons, against proceedings and bankruptcies whose bankruptcy was resolved by discharge from debts institute. Well, next slide, please. While thinking about the practical experience, I tried to dig into the past, and I found out that there's still an ancient evidence of bankrupts running on our servers. It's an application which predecessor to the insolvency register. It's not actually important what's on the file. It's about the visualization. This evidence was released in 90s. It was the time when the most usual connection to the internet in the Czech Republic was dial-up, so it's quite optimized to not to drain too much data. It has been terminated in 2007 as the new regulation, new Insolvency Act was introduced, and there were no new cases opened under the previous act. So it has no technical support, but still contain a lot of data, a lot of documents. This leads us to the one problem I would like to specifically mention, that it's the migration of data. When we are talking about practical experience in the Czech Republic, it's necessary to say that we are operating multiple evidences and registers which are incompatible among themselves, and we are not quite capable of putting them together, putting the databases together. So this is one practical point I want to mention. In the future, when we want to release the new systems, we'd like to standardize the data structure of behind the actual register. Next slide, please. Now we are getting to the actual insolvency register, which is currently running in the Czech Republic. It has been released in 2008, but the very application core is from 90s. This is, back then, it was a great success, and it led to a tremendous transparency of the insolvencies in the Czech Republic. But today, maintaining and operating and supporting the system of this of this age is virtually unimaginable. It's really costly when you want to adjust anything. The system cannot actually be too much modified because it's rather closed than opened. And to some extent, and it's sad to say, some of original developers are already dead, and they left us without any technical documentation. So this is why we are thinking and preparing a new insolvency register, which will maintain the transparency and the all other virtues, but will be quite next gen. This register had been adapted to interconnection of insolvency registers in version 1.0. As such, it allowed searching behind the European mask, but with the release of new IRI standardization, it wasn't adapted yet. So this is one of those issues and painful experiences maintaining old system. Yet for local creditors, it's quite useful because behind this front-end mask, there's a strong system of automated web services, which allows creditors just to ping the request and obtain the data without actually using the web browser. So all of the system creditors in the Czech Republic are directly connected to the very databases and data stored within the system practically in real time, which is excellent and allows to shorten the dates and time frames scheduled for procedural actions. Next slide, please. This is how the inner side of the register looks. This is the overview of the certain debtor and information on the upper side of the screenshot about the debtor, and then the list of all documents inside. So as I was saying, it maintains full transparency. It's the digitalized content of the insolvency file, and it's also available for all people, not just creditors, but publicly, even 5 years after the insolvency proceeding is dismissed. So the uses, it's very useful for creditors, authorities, and even academics looking for courts decisions, statistical purposes, and so on. Next slide, please. As I was previously saying, we are planning to introduce a new insolvency register, quite next gen. In the meantime, now the public procurement procedure was already closed, and now the development phase has just begun. It will be programmed by IBM, so I guess it may be quite a professional developer. It shall be released publicly in 2024, and it should meet standards for modern systems. Like it has to be modular, adjustable to modern legislation. It should have advanced analytical features like direct data storage, statistical reports generation and exporting devices, and also some kind of watchdog application that allows even minor creditors to look for their own debtors and getting notified while the debtor will emerge within the insolvency register. Next slide, please. There's one thing among many others I'd like to highlight, and it's the issue of electronic forms. It's a quite important virtue of our system because it allows to cut the costs intensely within the system. Like hundreds of thousands of papers are submitted by those forms, and even for insolvency creditors, and most for insolvency practitioners, this is a huge development in past years. Before 2016, there were a lot of requirements and different requirements among regional courts. So every single insolvency practitioner has to maintain, has to keep an eye on what's required from him. And it was quite a common practice that every single type of report had multiple versions required by different courts. So introducing standardized forms, which were made obligatory for courts and practitioners, completely cut those obstacles and allowed practitioners to work nationwide, actually. Here's the story behind it. The first generation of the forms made in 2017 were made by 3 people within the Ministry of Justice. Specifically me and 2 colleagues from IT. We did it in 2 months and mostly on weekends and evenings. It was like quite challenging and really inexpensive for the ministry. We made it, but the results weren't as good as expected. This led us to the need to revise the forms, and 4 years later we've actually contracted external professional developer and made a new version of those forms. The result and experience from this is that the digitalization cannot be done without funds. It cannot be done with internal forces. It cannot be done without proper project management. So if I'd be asked to do it again, I'd sincerely refuse this time, because it's not viable strategy. Next slide, please. I will skim through these slides just to show you what was the original development of those forms. This is a final report which is used in liquidation. It's the report of insolvency practitioner at the very end of the insolvency proceedings, highlighting the progress of the liquidation and the outcomes. So this is the form made in Excel, created in 2016 by regional courts, that has been unofficially distributed among insolvency practitioners. Next slide, please. We took that file and remade it into an actual PDF interactive form, which we made obligatory for insolvency practitioners and so courts. The very important thing here is that it contained the data layer, so it allows us to extract all the data from those reports. This feature allows us to generate tremendous amounts of internal data about insolvency proceedings in the Czech Republic. So we actually are able to calculate what's the profile of average debtor, what's the average satisfaction rate of both secured and unsecured creditors. This helps us to target the legislation, the new legislation, and even implementing the European directives. Next slide, please. And this is how the same form looks like now. It's even more interactive. It's prepared by a broad community of judges and practitioners. It's a simple single form, which is really elaborated behind as it is adjusted to multiple procedural strategies, or better than strategies, let's say, the flows of the proceedings. Like it's really versatile in this regard. Also, it's less colorful than the others. I was previously mentioning that insolvency courts keep files in hybrid form. This less colorful form allows to print it 3 times faster than the green one previous. So even this kind of small issue is really decisive when it comes to the thing that you need to print out hundreds of thousands of those forms at once. And as well as the others, it has no glitches. The previous version has, and that led to funny situations, like when we extracted the data, some debtors suddenly had millions of children and hundreds of millions of incomes, and so on. Next slide, please. So this is the last slide I've prepared. And it's some kind of summarization of our experience when it comes to digitalization in the insolvency area in the Czech Republic. The first of all, data migration. As I was previously saying, it's quite challenging to maintain 3 or more systems at once. and migration is both costly and time-consuming. So we are now trying to maintain as much interconnectability as possible, even bearing in mind to directly connect the register with the registers like commercial register and the other ones. Also, we like to follow with new forms, introduction of new electronic forms. And there are many. As we've heard, Poland already has 800 forms. We had only 13, so there's a space for development, I guess. The main issue when it comes to digitalization and a great boogeyman for us is the problem of vendor lock-in. I've shown the current version of Insolvency Register and mentioned the problems with adjusting it. The problem is that we are locked in a contract that doesn't allow us the flexibility and proper and quick adjustments of the system. And when it comes to further development, it's really costly. So it's very important to bear in mind that not to be dependent on an exclusive contractor in here. This comes to the next thing. When it comes to licenses, the operator and the administrator of the system, ministry or courts in other jurisdictions should possess full licenses. That means that they may adjust the systems at their own or by another vendor. So it's also very, very important. I'm not sure whether it's just a hallmark of the Czech digitalization system or it's usual among others that we struggle with keeping the time frameworks, time schedules. It's really painful when it comes to the timeframes set up by grants or subsidies, and knowing that you have only like 2 years to implement and develop and implement a fully operational system. Otherwise, you are obliged to return those subsidies. So there's no time, no space for time optimism, and we've experienced this very painfully in recent years. And at last, as usual, you need proper funding. Homemade applications just are not good enough, and especially when it comes to numbers in millions, it's really worth it to invest some money to make it proper at once. So maybe this is the summarization of our practical experience. I hope I didn't get angry any of my superiors by making such feedback, and I'm open to your question. Thank you.
Right, we will not share this with your superiors, so no worries. Right, what do you think is the digitalization of insolvency a priority in Czech Republic?
Well, it's quite a priority from one simple reason, because we are developing something which is called an electronic file. That's a common ground for all areas of proceedings, for civil proceedings, criminal proceedings. And because we have the most experience just from the insolvency area, we decided to test the e-file project on insolvency. So currently we are developing the system, and hopefully after some adjustments and some years of functioning, will expand these results to other fields of proceedings.
Did you have a chance to listen to the whole conference today, for example, a Polish and Lithuanian experience, or you just joined?
I joined at 1 p.m. So.
Oh, so you heard. Yeah, the question we asked them is the same one goes to you about Czech Republic's insolvency registers compliance with the EU's regulation on insolvency proceedings and also EU's directive on preventive restructuring. So, what's your assessment about the Czech system and its compliancy?
Well, that's what hurt in past years. I believe it's compliant with insolvency regulation, and with minor adjustments, I believe it's also compliant with the directive. We shall be able to present the data. We already accept electronic submissions to the courts. So, speaking about some sort of compliance with EU legislation, I believe we are fine.
Okay, sounds good. Sounds good. You're more confident than your colleagues, say from Poland, which is good, I believe, for you. You showed us the PDF forms on slides, and the question is, where do you store these forms? I mean, the data.
Every single insolvency court works as a digital node of the matrix. Ministry maintains the matrix, but data centers are stored, by every single insolvency court. So those PDF forms are stored on huge data centers, and they are, by some kind of procedure I cannot explain right now, is mirrored to the users, to the public using the insolvency register. So it's protected from data mining and stealing those files.
See, yeah. Well, regarding data mining, you as an authority, what else could you extrapolate in terms of data beyond the things that you already mentioned from these PDF forms?
Well, first of all, the amount of the data we collect is tremendous. There are tens, maybe hundreds of data fields processing by every debtor that we, disregarding the number of family members or satisfaction rate for creditors, we can tell month by month what is the progress of repayment calendar, repayment scheme, how much money specifically go to the certain creditors. We can process data about addresses and well, it's honestly too much to process it. Actually, we are currently up to make it a project to even recognize what it's worth it to process into some statistical reports.
Mm-hmm. All right, one last one. Perhaps you could share the assessed expenses of creation of the next generation insolvency register. Do you have any assumptions?
Quite clear. It's I believe the public procurement documentation counts with, and I need to recalculate it to euros. It's 10 million euros for the whole new insolvency register.
Okay, I'm just looking at the reaction in the local audience. Is it a lot? 10 million? How much was it in Latvia? Oh, approximately. Oh, we don't know. We just don't know. Okay. Well, anyways, thank you for sharing and thank you for joining us today. It was very valuable to hear also about Czech Republic's experience. So thank you so much, Andre.
It was my pleasure. Have
All
a
right.
nice day.
Bye-bye. Nu, re, tā mēs esam nonākuši līdz noslēgumam. Ar, ka es atkal pārslēdzu uz Latviju.
So we have come to the conclusion. So I'm switching back to Latvian, those who hadn't heard it for a long time. So if you look at implementation of technologies, of course, this is full of challenges, but also it provides a lot of new opportunities. And it was also emphasized by official guests this morning by the Minister Jānis Bordāns that we cannot miss such an opportunities. And in this conference, we also made sure that Latvian achievement in the area of digitalization of insolvency is assessed as successful. And we are not only talking about EMUS system, there are a lot of systems, also court information system, and also about e-auctions site, and also electronic insolvency system, electronic, of course. And there is a set of tools, and this set of tools gives us comprehensive understanding and also knowledge about each case for each person, entity involved in this process. We also heard about experience from other countries, including also success stories and not so successful things, which is very valuable for those who are doing something, to listen how others are doing. Of course, generally in Europe, there is one path, united path, how to digitalize this area. And we can be proud that we are one of the first ones, pioneers who do it. So thanks to everyone who is involved. And also greetings to the 20th anniversary of the Insolvency Control Service. Thank you to all the participants, all the speakers, everybody who asked questions, everybody who connected. My name is Oskar Spriede. I was your moderator today, and see you next time. Goodbye. Thank you.